This competition uses the same brand of water from the same water source as last year's micro-water discrimination competition. Tian's words fall down, and the whole audience is in an uproar. Everyone's eyes suddenly focus on Alan Will. If it's water from the same brand and the same water source, why can Alan Will see it when he competed last year, but not this year? Even if he is in a bad state today, it should be said that the difficulty of such familiar things will be reduced accordingly. Unless, last year, as Tian said, what he identified was not water, but water cup. Only in this way can we explain why he made such a big deviation and mistake. No way, how could this be? Alan Will can't believe looking at Tian, shaking his head, almost can't believe his ears. At this moment, he suddenly realized that from the beginning, Tian was consciously arranging to expose his deception of micro-water discrimination. Empty talk, indeed without evidence, but now, Tian has come up with solid, so that he cannot refute the evidence. If you think there's a problem, or if you think I'm lying, I can tune out your video from last year's game to make sure the answer is the same. Tian looks at Alan Will with a smile, and his expression is relaxed and casual. Aye. Alan Will's lips moved, but he couldn't say a complete word. Although he wanted to sophistry, he couldn't find an excuse. If you think there's a problem, I can compare with you again. This time, it's very simple. We don't need to be so complicated. Pour mineral water from 2 brands and different water sources into 2 cups and watch carefully. Then, let the staff pour 2 bottles of water randomly into the other 2 cups. Let's identify which cup is which one, okay? Do you dare? Tian looks at Alan Will's appearance, picks eyebrow to smile lightly, immediately, then lay. Alan, promise him and fight with him again. Let us know that his accusations are nonsense. Yes, Alan, compete with him again and prove your name as the god of water again. One mistake is nothing. Cheer up, do it again, and let him know how powerful you are. When Tian's words fall, a Quebec man around him calls out to Alan Will, asking him to do it again, prove himself and correct his name. Another one? Alan Will's face turned pale as he listened to the noise around him. He knows better than anyone that Tian didn't lie. What he relied on in the micro-water discrimination competition was to confuse concepts, and use the method of identifying cups to hide things from the world, so that everyone thought that he had the ability to identify water and won the name of water god. In the competition just now, Tian has pulled him down from the altar with his victory. If he fails again, he will not be able to be a god, not even a man. But the most important thing is, you can see the expression of Quebec people at the moment. They are very eager for him to fight again and prove their strength with actions. If he chooses to avoid war, it will make these people feel that he is as timid as a mouse, and what he is waiting for will be endless abuse and ridicule. Failure, falling into the abyss, avoidance of war, abuse and ridicule. At this moment, he had no idea what he should do. Don't you dare to gamble on the probability of 5 to 5? Tian raises eyebrow a smile, looking at Alan Will, light way. Alan, what are you thinking about? You don't dare to gamble on the chance of 5 to 5? Are you afraid of this Chinese boy? Cheer up, Alan. Give him some color. Have you forgotten your name as the god of water? Win him for me and let him know that your name as the god of water is not a false one. When a group of Quebec people looked at Alan Will's silence, they had a bad premonition in their heart. At the same time, they blushed, their necks were thick, and they waved their fists hard. They kept shouting to Alan Will, hoping that he could fight and win the game. They boast that they are superior. They think that the Chinese people are inferior to them in both physique and intelligence. Just the failure, it is so that they cannot accept, their incomparable desire, to be able to overcome Tian, overcome China once, so as to find the kind of high in the sense. Alan Will listened to this voice, eyes changed, finally, suddenly squeezed 5 fingers, looked at Tian, said, I accept the second challenge. He is very clear, he is out and out of the woods. If he chooses not to fight, then he is a coward and a coward. All Quebec people will spit on him mercilessly. Although it's not very good to wait for his end if he fails, isn't there still a chance of 5 to 5? Therefore, he wants to go out and gamble. He doesn't believe that his luck will be so bad that he can fail again. Well done, Ellen, I knew you were the best. Summon up courage, cheer up and give this stupid Chinese boy a little color. This time, the winner will be us. When Ellen Will's words fell, the Quebec people immediately went crazy, one by one cheered, excited, and excited. If you don't know, I'm afraid you have to think that they have won the game. Che, I really like to make a fuss. It's like you win. Call after the game. Now, be honest. A group of Yenhua students shook their heads with disdain. They didn't like the fuss of Quebec people. Come on, you know what? We're the winners. I will prove myself and let them know that what you say is nonsense. Alan Will twisted his neck and shook his body as a boxer did before he came on stage. Then he looked at Yi Tian and said in a loud voice. Let's wait and see. Yi Tian looks at Ellen Will's appearance, light smile shakes head, light way. The game begins. With the two men in place, the staff soon began to prepare for the second bureau. This time, it's even simpler. Just two people need to identify the imported mineral water again, then take it away, pour two kinds of mineral water from different places into 2 cups, and then 2 people can identify it. Finally, the final answer is expelled. I choose this one. It's the mineral water just used in the competition. A little later, Alan Will looked at the 2 water cups in front of him, pointed to the one on his side, and said in a loud voice. Are you sure? Yi Tian hears the speech, looking at Alan Will with a smile, light way. The expression on Alan Will's face immediately became hesitant. That's it, I'm sure. But just for a moment, his eyes were awe-inspiring and he shook his head firmly. He felt that Yi Tian might have seen something, but he didn't want him to win, so he was deliberately deceiving him, hoping that he would change his decision. Congratulations, wrong answer again. Yi Tian heard the sound, looked at Alan Will, shook his head and said fatally, my judgment is that these 2 glasses of water, no matter which one, are not the imported bottle of mineral water. No way. It's absolutely impossible. Ellen Will's face changed. He stood up abruptly, looked at the staff and said in a loud voice. Several judges decided to increase the difficulty of the competition. Therefore, these 2 cups are all Chinese mineral water. Congratulations, Yi Tian won. The staff shook their heads and gave a simple answer. You. Alan Will was furious when he heard the words. Even if he wanted to scold the staff for deliberately changing the rules, he could not say a word. Even after this change, there is still a 25% probability, but his identification is still wrong. No, it's not wrong to be more precise, it should be said that it was a second kill. He was killed by Yi Tianxiang's incomparable memory and recognition ability. Lost? Lost again. How is that possible? At this moment, even a lot of Quebec people began to doubt whether Alan Will was bought by the Chinese and was deliberately releasing water. After all, Huaxia now has a lot of money to buy. But, looking at the gaping expression on Alan Will's face and his trembling body, they gave up. After all, if Alan Will really took the money, how could he show such a strange look? The only explanation is that Alan Will is really inferior to others. He lost to Yi Tian because he couldn't return to heaven. I declare that the winner of this competition is still Yi Tian. Alan Will, failure at this time. The staff looked around and simply announced the results. 1. We won again, ha ha ha, this is the real water god. Alan Will, he's nothing but a fake. China is invincible. After a word, all the Chinese people on the scene are boiling, not only them, but also all the Chinese people watching the game through the live broadcast. They are also boiling at the moment, one by one waving their fists, yelling loudly, and their blood is boiling. What brain competition champion, what water god, I Huaxia all kick. We are the best. The Quebec people, on the other hand, were all silent. They bowed their heads and could not say a word. The result of the game, at this moment, there is no possibility of any return to the world. Their failure, like a nail in the coffin, cannot be changed. Such a result was completely unexpected before they came. They don't want to admit that they will fail. In other words, they don't want to admit that the Chinese people are even better than them in the brain competition they think is extremely powerful. But at present, they can't help but admit this iron fact. Who else? At this time, Yi Tian's eyes bent, smiling, looking at a group of Quebec people, light way. The stage was quiet. Every Quebec man bowed his head and didn't dare to have eye contact with Tian. He was worried that once his eyes met, he would think that he wanted to compete with him, and then he lost the game, and he would be disgraced in front of everyone. Ellen Will's face has turned to a pig liver color, 5 fingers pinching the palm tightly, fingernails piercing the palm, blood flowing across the fingers, all imperceptible. How he wanted to open his mouth, drink, and stand up. But he knew that he, who had been defeated twice in succession, had no qualification at all. If you stand up again, you will only insult yourself. In the same way, Tian, who can recognize the subtle differences of water, how can he be worse than him in other brain competitions? Who else? At this time, Tian looked around the field again with a bright smile and said. This time, his voice rose a few degrees. In his clear voice, he was full of power, giving people a kind of majestic spirit that cannot be defeated by a single man. 3 times of questioning, slowly superimposed, like surging tide, like a 3-inch punch, hard hit all Quebec people in the face. Spicy. It stings. Sour. Every Quebec has a mixed feeling in his heart, every Quebec's cheek is burning hot, every Quebec, at this moment, would like to find a crack in the ground and bury his head deep in the ground. No one? No one? Please, whoever goes up, beat him after a long time, a sad and helpless female voice suddenly rang out. Looking around, she looked at the Quebec people around her and said with heart splitting and trembling. But a word fell, waiting for her, but it was silence, such as death, such as lead solidification silence. This scene let her fall to the ground, like a little girl, sobbing bitterly. All the students of Yenhua University, as well as the Chinese people, are quietly watching this scene. Such pictures can be seen everywhere in the streets of China more than 100 years ago. At that time, the Chinese people were the ones sitting on the ground sobbing. But fortunately, the efforts of generations, the blood of generations, and the struggle of generations have finally changed all this. After a long time, a Quebec man, with a dark face, wants to leave this place, just like the Israelites, who want to leave their crying wall. The entrance of Yenhua University will become an impassable and sad place for all Quebec people. You seem to have forgotten something. Our previous bet was very clear. If you lose, what will you do? But at this time, Tian suddenly looked at the exchange of those who are ready to take advantage of the chaos, light way. Yes, it was clear at that time that if you lose the game, you have to apologize. You have to kneel down in front of me and admit that you are not as smart as the Chinese people. You Quebec people, don't you have so much courage? To be a man, you have to keep your word. If you open your mouth and say it, you don't even count it. Who is it? When Tian's words fell, the students of Yenhua University around him immediately stood in front of the person in charge of the overseas exchange students and Quebec people, blocking their route. Do you want me to send you the video to see it again before you are willing to fulfill your bet? Tian, condescending, looking at a group of overseas exchange students in charge, continued to light way. We don't know what you're talking about. The heads of the overseas exchange students looked at each other, and they were flustered, but they still insisted. In front of so many people, kneeling down and apologizing, this is simply to lose face, dry wipe clean, they really can't do such a thing. Rubbish, you don't believe what you say. Words don't count. Are you still human? A group of students in Yenhua University were angry when they heard the news. They looked at the people in charge of the overseas students and roared. These guys are really rubbish. If they win, they will be arrogant. If they lose, they will not admit it. What is rubbish? This is rubbish. Haha, since I don't admit it, I'm ready to cheat. Just as it happens, my favorite thing is to clean up those cheaters. At this time, with a faint smile, Tian suddenly jumped down from the stage and stood in front of the heads of the overseas exchange students, just like a god. What do you want to do? Several overseas exchange students see Tian's appearance, and their bodies immediately tremble. Looking at him, they tremble. The thing I want to do is very simple, that is to let you people admit defeat by gambling. Suddenly, Tian's whole body mana was working, and his thoughts were scattered. Like a raging tide, he swept around and said, "Kneel down, apologize." Word by word, in a flash, it was as if the tide from the hurricane directly shot into the heads of all the people in the field, making them feel that their eardrums and heads were buzzing madly, and even their legs could not help but start to shiver madly, which made them feel like kneeling on the ground. At that moment, they felt that Tian was like a giant, a man of gold, standing there, standing aloof and looking down on the world. And all of them are like ants on the ground. Even if they do their best to look up, they can only see Tian's toes. Kneel down, palm mouth, apologize. At this time, Tian began to drink low again. As soon as the sound falls, tens of millions of volcanoes erupt at the same time in the depths of the sea, and thousands of waves and thousands of heavy snow are surging in heavy. They directly hit the defense line of their hearts, withering and decaying, and washing into the air. The whole spirit of the people, like being destroyed, disappears. Put on next breath, along the field, suddenly came bursts of the following dumpling-like knee landing sound. Pop. 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 Along with the landing sound of the knee, the crisp and incomparable slap sound also rang out. At this moment, all the heads of overseas exchange students, like puppets manipulated by others, raise their palms high and pull towards their cheeks. Their bodies are trembling, their souls are trembling, their blood is coagulating, their courage is broken. In front of Tian's powerful power, there is only one thing they can do, that is to be obedient, not to do any resistance, and to carry out everything unconditionally. Because, that kind of feeling, let them feel, it seems that as long as Tian is willing, as long as you stick out a little finger, you can easily crush them into debris dust. I'm sorry, we are wrong. Sorry, it's all our fault. Sorry, our intelligence is not as good as that of Chinese people. I'm sorry, please. Let us go. We know we're wrong. Immediately after, a cry, one after another, sounded in the field, everyone, trembling to send out a cry. Ha, Quebec people, but that's all. Tian looked at this scene, looked up and sneered, and immediately left a sentence. As a result, no matter who is in charge of the overseas exchange students or the rest of Quebec people, they feel that their cheeks are like thousands of slaps in the face. The intense pain makes their mind collapse. They understand that they have really lost out. It's not just losing this game. More lost in the spirit. After a long time, all Quebec people walk out with their heads down, their faces sad, like the walking corpses whose souls have been hollowed out. We won. Ha ha, we are the final winner. Looking back at the Quebec people who left, all the students of Yenhua University and the Chinese people on the scene cheered. Suddenly, I don't know who started, but I rushed to Tian, lifted him up, threw him into the air, and then took him in my hand. The uproar, the eagerness, and the anguish of Quebec are two extremes, heaven on one side and hell on the other. I don't know how long it took for the crowd to leave, but the whole campus of Yenhua University is still full of laughter and laughter. Every student's cheek is full of joy, dancing, and chatting about what just happened. Tian. At this time, Qin Luotian also waved to Tian, who was finally put on the ground by the crowd. What are you doing here? Tian saw Qin Luogod, naturally took her hand, and then said with a smile. Two people have experienced the test of life and death. That feeling is the most real, also the most concise, no one can compare. If I don't come for such a big stir, isn't this girlfriend too irresponsible? Qin Luotian, learning from Tian Ping, picks the tip of his eyebrows and sings with a smile. Then he leans on his shoulder intimately. In this scene, Yan Bing, Xiaoyue, Ning Shui, Wen Wen and Chang Yuechan are very sour. But they also know that the relationship between Tian and Qin Luotian is very different from them. Not everyone can have the feeling that has experienced the test of life and death. Similarly, Qin Luotian is Tian's real girlfriend, and what are they? Do you only see God Luo coming, but you can't see us coming too? Or Chang Yuechan the most atmosphere, looking at Tian pick eyebrows, laughing jokingly. Yes, didn't we come all the way to see you? If you have a girlfriend, you forget our friends. I can't see that you are the same as those who have opposite sex or not. She a language falls, the Ning Snow beside also followed to smile to sing of tease, just that intonation, take some sour. I'll tell you, if you sprinkle dog food, you can see the surrounding conditions. We are a large group of single dogs, but we don't want to taste the sour smell of the dog food you sprinkle.
Looking at Yi Tian tenderly and playfully, he said with a smile.
One by one, although they are making fun of Yi Tian, as long as they are smart people, they can feel a kind of bitterness from their conversation. Qin Luotian narrowed his eyes and sang with a smile, but he was as smart as her. He could not feel the envy of the girls around her.
Ah, everyone, I'm really sorry. Well, it's hard for you to come all the way to Yanjing to cheer for me. Now, I invite you to dinner.
Although Yi Tian also understands the feelings of these girls for him, but now Ning Yao is still asleep. When he is with Qin Luotian, he feels extremely guilty.
How can he put more people in his heart?
He can only pretend that nothing has happened and laughs. You have to invite us to a meal, and you have to invite us to a big meal.
Otherwise, there will be no sincerity,
he said with a gentle smile. Yes, today we must kill Yi Tian so that this guy can understand how painful it is for him to turn a blind eye to us. Cheng Yuechan also opens her mouth with a smile, but with a pun. She seems to be talking about what's happening now, and she seems to be talking about Yi Tian's ignorance of their good feelings.
I tell you, Yi Tian is rich now.
If we order less, we are looking down on him. I'm sorry for him. Rather snow hears the sound, also follow the fan that laughs to sing to ignite.
You are going to eat me back before liberation.
Yi Tian made an extremely painful appearance, joked, and then waved his hand, said, well, I'm bleeding today, as long as you want to eat, any point, even if it's dragon liver and phoenix marrow, don't ask the price.
How heroic. Awesome. Then we are welcome. The most expensive restaurant in Beijing, let's go gentle clap. Big eyes narrowed into a line, waving hands, laughing.
Soon, the party found a restaurant with good evaluation in Beijing. This kind of restaurant usually needs to wait in line to make an appointment, but Qin Luotian calls and reports Yi Tian's name. The owner of the restaurant immediately makes a decision, pushes off all the guests today, and devotes himself to preparing a big meal for Yi Tian, so that the hero can taste the delicious Beijing cuisine. Ning Shui and gentleness, though they scream fiercely, just like they want to eat poor Yi Tian, but in fact, the dishes they ordered are all seasonal dishes, and they don't order anything strange, except the expensive ones.
Ding ling ling. However, as soon as the dishes are put on the table, Yi Tian's mobile phone rings again. It's the 90% phone number of Su Qing. If you have something to do, just talk. Is it fun to play silence? Yi Tian saw the number and frowned. After he got through, he said coldly to the phone. He doesn't know what Su Qing is up to. He has made it very clear that there is no possibility between the two people. Moreover, if there is something, she can call herself directly to say it. It's not much better than playing the game of not saying a word. How can you be so fierce? But to Yi Tian's surprise, the voice from the phone is not Su Qing, but Xiao Qing. How did Su Qing's phone get into Xiao Qing's hands? Yi Tian frowned, and suddenly he had a bad feeling in his heart. Yi Tian, I'm sorry to disturb you. There's only one thing I have to tell you. At this time, Yunfei's voice came from the phone and said slowly, I'm sorry for your entrustment. I didn't take good care of Su Cheng. A few days ago, the elder of our school made a decision to let her go to marry Qingming's sect. It was decided by Qingming's sect. It seems that we can see the particularity of her constitution. Su Qing is going to make a cauldron for someone? Hearing this, Yi Tian's face suddenly turned cold. He has no feelings for Su Qing, but in any case, both of them once lived under the same roof. Today, Su Qing is about to be humiliated and killed. How can he sit back and ignore it? At the same time, at this moment, he finally understood the reason why Su Qing was silent when he called before. I'm afraid that at that time, Su Qing was also hesitant to tell him the truth. I'm afraid that every time he dials the number, he will summon up all his courage. But when he gets through, he can't say a word again. I once told you to tell your master that Su Qing has a special constitution. If you Shu Yuzong push her out to make a cauldron, you will bear my anger. Have you forgotten this? Closely following, Leaf Day to Cloud Fei Light Wei. When Su Qing followed Yunfei to Shui Yuzong to practice, he warned Yunfei not to take Su Qing as a cauldron, or take her special constitution as a gift to someone. At that time, Yunfei also promised him. But now, Shui Yuzong wants Su Qing to marry Qingmingzong. How can Yi Tian not be angry? Yi Tian, why are you talking so hard?
I can't blame my elder martial sister for Su Qing's affair. In order to stop it, she fell out with the patriarch and punished her for thinking for many days. Today, she just left the quiet room.
The first thing is to call you, and you still say that about him.
Yi Tian, a language falls, over there of small green, immediately dissatisfied of retort way.
I'm sorry, I'm a little out of line.
The leaf day hears a sound, this just reaction come over, oneself just of words really is some excesses. What has the matter of Shuiyu clan is not that Yun Fei has the final say. If she decides what to do, even if she goes to fight, it will not necessarily have consequences. And Su Qing, of course, will not tell him.
It's none of your business.
I brought Su Qing back to Shuiyuzong.
I'm really responsible for such things.
Yin Fei shook his head, and then said, this time, there is some trouble. An elder of Qingming's sect came to Shuiyuzong as a guest and took a fancy to Su Qing. Although Master Xiaowei and I talked about the relationship between Su Qing and you, Master seems to have talked to the elder, but it didn't work. The other party decided to take Su Qing away and threatened the master. Knowing that Su Qing is related to himself, King Mingzong dares to do so. It's obvious that he wants to fight against himself. The leaf day hears a sound, the corner of the mouth immediately peeped out a put-on sneer.
What is Su Qing's attitude towards this matter?
Closely following, Leaf Day sends to Cloud Fei to ask away.
She didn't say anything.
After a few days' hesitation, she nodded her head and agreed.
But I felt that she didn't want to.
She didn't want to make me embarrassed for her, so she reluctantly agreed. Now, according to the instructions of the elder of Qingming sect, the master sent her to one of our Shueiyue sect's training places to carry out latent cultivation and improve cultivation.
Only then did I get her mobile phone and call you.
Yunfei sighed, slowly, and then apologized. Yi Tian, I'm sorry, I'm responsible for your entrustment. I know that it's hard to tell the grudge between you and Su Qing, but I still hope you can help her this time. The elder of Qingming sect has a bad reputation.
The female mountain people who have followed him all come to a bad end, either dead or mad.
Moreover, he is aiming at Su Qing just to help him break through the top of heaven with the help of his special constitution.
Yi Tian is silent.
He knows that Su Qing should resist.
Otherwise, he won't call him.
It's just that Su Qing really can't open that mouth, so after he got through the phone, he didn't say anything. Tell me where your Shuiyuzong is.
I'll go there as soon as possible. Immediately, Yi Tian to the Cloud Fei over the telephone, sync a voice way.
Although the relationship between him and Su Qing, as Yunfei said, is difficult to explain clearly, but he can't watch Su Qing jump into the fire pit, but he is indifferent, that kind of cold-blooded, he can't do it.
Shuiyuzong is in Qicheng Mountain of Tianfu.
When you get to Qicheng Mountain, you can call me and I or Shao Qing can bring you in. Otherwise, ordinary people can't enter Shuiyuzong, and even the Shanmen can't be found anywhere. Cloud Fei hears Leaf Day this words, on the face immediately peeps out a put-on happy color, to Leaf Day way.
Ordinary people can't enter Shuiyuzong.
They can't even find the mountain gate. Yi Tian heard this, eyes immediately slightly move, immediately aware that Shuiyuzong should be in a small world. However, this is not difficult to understand. After all, Qicheng Mountain belongs to a scenic spot in China, with many tourists. If there was such a mountain sect on it, people would have discovered the secrets of the mountain people for a long time, and the existence of Shaoshan people would not have been unknown in modern society. However, there have always been legends about fairies on Mount Qicheng. Now it seems that the so-called fairies are the disciples of Shuiyuzong who accidentally show their abilities to the world.
Okay, I remember.
I'll go to Qicheng Mountain as soon as possible. When I get there, I'll contact you. After Yi Tian had a general speculation in his heart, he nodded and gave a positive answer.
Well, I'll thank you for Su Qing.
Yunfei smell speech, immediately long sigh of relief, grateful way. After this incident, she was exhausted and felt that the sky was about to collapse.
She didn't know what to do.
But now, after Yi Tian opened her mouth, she suddenly felt that the big stone was suddenly loosened. Although she didn't know what Yi Tian was going to do, she felt that she had seen the dawn and hope.
Wait till you see her. Yi Tian, some helpless, sighed, and then hung up the phone. He did not want to have any intersection with Su Qing, but the fate of the arrangement, but always let the intersection between the two. Yi Tian, what happened to Su Cheng? Yi Tian put down the phone. Qin Luoshan and other talent looking at Yi Tian, doubt asked. They all know the existence of Su Qing, and they probably know the past between Su Qing and Yi Tian. To be exact, they understand that Su Qing is the first girl Yi Tian likes. They are all latecomers. Even Qin Luoshan is worried that Yi Tian will never forget Su Qing. After all, there is a saying that what a man can't forget most is his first love. Su Qing's constitution is quite special. It belongs to the cauldron body in practice, and can help people improve their accomplishments. Now some people are following her constitution, and want to break through her accomplishments and get married with her. But she refuses to tell me. One of her elder martial sisters called me. Yi Tianqing is magnanimous and has nothing to hide. He tells them the truth directly. There are such shameless people in the world. If you want to improve your self-cultivation, you just have to rely on other people's bodies to sacrifice their happiness for a lifetime. This kind of person is really rubbish. Yi Tian, I support you, go to help Su Qing to get justice, and give the garbage a little color. Yes, this kind of person is really disgusting. We must deal with him severely. When Yi Tian's words fall, all the worries in the girl's heart disappear. Instead, they are filled with sympathy and indignation. Instead of stopping Yi Tian, they encourage him to seek justice for Su Qing. If Yi Tian doesn't go to Qicheng Mountain, they may have to go to Qicheng Mountain by themselves to get justice for Su Qing. Girls' world is so strange, they intrigue, they are careful, but they share a common hatred. Of course, all this is based on the fact that these girls are kind-hearted. Because of Su Qing's past and Yi Tian's past, they don't think that Su Qing has encountered such a thing now, so they can watch the play and watch jokes from other sides. Instead, they feel unfair and resentful for her, hoping to seek justice for her. Well, after this meal, I'll go to Qicheng Mountain. Yi Tian looked at their beautiful or gorgeous or dignified cheeks, but they had the same kind cheeks. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth and said. In fact, he wanted to see the elder of Qingming sect and ask him where he came from. Even after hearing his name, he dared to act recklessly. Does he think it's amazing that he can become a top of the world? Or does he feel that he has already lived enough, so he wants to spend his last time in the world, and he is addicted to bear heart and leopard gall? Unexpected events suddenly made this celebration party tasteless. After dinner, Qin Luoshan, Yanbing and Ning Shui send Yi Tian to the airport. As for the ticket to Qicheng Mountain, Qin Luoshan had already made a reservation at the time of the meal, as always, first class. Don't worry. I'll take care of things over there. Yi Tian walks into the airport and looks at Qin Luoshan and them with concern. He says sincerely. Speaking of this, he was really moved. These girls were really kind. They were very concerned about what happened to Su Qing. On the way to the airport, they were worried. Qin Luogod listened to Yi Tian's words, his face couldn't help but show a wry smile. What she worries about is not only what happens to Su Qing, but also that when Yi Tian arrives at Qicheng Mountain and meets Su Qing, there will be another storm between them. After all, it's easy to win the girl's heart when the hero saves the beauty. Needless to say, what happened to Su Qing is more related to her life's happiness. Therefore, she is very worried that Su Qing's love for Yi Tian will revive. As the saying goes, men chase women, women chase men across the mountain, and there are layers of paper. After this event, the relationship between Su Qing and Yi Tian will return to normal. If that's the case, how can she get along with herself? However, she can't tell Yi Tian directly. In that case, it seems that she is too mean. As for the relationship between Su Qing and me, you don't have to worry. I have no feelings for her. The reason why I choose to do it is that I don't know many people in the world, and she happens to be one. Moreover, even if I don't know her, I don't want to be indifferent to such things. But just at this time, Yi Tian saw that after Qin Luoshan heard his words, the worried color on his face still did not abate. Then he patted his head and said with a smile. It's up to you to tell me what to do and who you like or dislike. Qin Luogod heard this, his face immediately showed a smile,
but pretended not to care, said.
That's how much I think. Yi Tian looks at the appearance of Qin Luo God and laughs.
These women are not from the heart.
Soon, it's time to board. Yi Tian waved to the crowd, then went through the security check and boarded successfully. A few hours later, the plane landed smoothly at Qicheng Airport.
When Yi Tian stepped out of the plane, he immediately saw Qingqing Mountain in the distance. The Green Mountain is towering and winding, like a dragon and a tiger. It is shrouded in clouds and fog. It has a sense of sacred mystery. Qicheng Mountain has a very long history, which can be traced back to the era of Emperor Xian Yuan. It is said that the dragon skill of Yellow Emperor Xian Yuan controlling the wind and cloud was passed down by Ningfengzi, who was a monk in Qicheng Mountain. Moreover, Zhang Daoling, the later Tianshi Zhang, also preached here and emerged in the mountain, making this place one of the ancestors of Taoism.
If it was in the past, Yi Tian would only regard these legends as myths and legends.
But now, with more and more experience, he finds that there seems to have been a glorious era of cultivation civilization on the earth. All this, he can't help but connect all that with the myths and legends spread from the heart of the world. In particular, Shui Yuzong actually lives in the small world of Qicheng Mountain, which makes Yi Tian speculate more about these legends. However, this time he did not come to explore these secrets, nor did he pay attention to these things, just like ordinary tourists, climbing all the way along the mountain road. Just as he was going forward, his eyes kept scanning, looking around, looking for the field. Although, as long as he makes a phone call to Yunfei, the other party will come to pick him up, but this time, he doesn't come to visit and make friends, but to make power, to let the elder of Shui Yuzong and King Mingzong understand, despise him, will pay the corresponding price. Therefore, he wants to use his own strength to enter Shui Yuzong, so that those people can understand that their so-called hiding method is just idle.
Here it is.
A little later, Yi Tian came to the bank of Tianjing Lake in Qingcheng Mountain.
The lake water is as clear as a mirror. You can see the bottom at a glance. It's very clear and smart. It's said that Tianjing Lake is a fairy in the sky, who accidentally knocked the mirror down from the sky, fell to the ground and turned it into a clear lake. It's said that sometimes when you look into the lake, you can see the appearance of the fairy in the sky, and sometimes it's still a fairy in the bath. At this time, along the side of the tour group, came the guide to the tourists to explain the voice of words. Can you see fairies in Tianjing Lake?
When Yi Tian hears the words, his mind immediately moves slightly. The eye of the source sky opens and shines through the lake. Suddenly, he finds the track of the array pattern of the field. However, as Yi Tian can see, this field array pattern is very strange. A large part of the field array pattern looks very mysterious, but some of it is very simple and full of mistakes. It belongs to a kind of blindfold field which is very common in the square-inch spirit field. This discovery immediately confirmed Yi Tian's judgment that the mountain gate of Shui Yuzong was under the mirror lake. As for the so-called occasional seeing of fairies, it is because Shui Yuzong's field attainments are not perfect, and there are mistakes in the field of blinding eyes. Occasionally, the appearance of Shui Yuzong's disciples will be transferred to the water, which has a subtle reaction with the field. As for the fairies bathing, I'm afraid that which Shui Yuzong's disciples are unlucky and just touched by the field array.
Go Yi Tian stands on one side quietly.
When the Ruji tourists leave, Yuan Tian's eyes shine through, looking for the solution to the field. He takes out the array disc and makes a fight to the field.
Hum! In a flash, tens of millions of ripples appeared along the water surface of Tianjing Lake.
It looked like the smooth water surface was suddenly cut into thousands of pieces. It looked very mysterious.
Yi Tian can't help saying that he jumps out of the bank and into Tianjing Lake. Dong!
His body jumped into the lake, but he didn't feel like entering the water, and his feet didn't touch the slightest bit of water. Instead, he stood firmly on the ground. Not only that, but even his clothes were not stained with water. And outside the Tianjing Lake, he jumped into the moment. The surface of the lake has returned to normal, calm as a mirror, just like everything, just an illusion.
Is it that I am dazzled to see someone jump into the lake just now? How can I see now that there is no one?
Yi Tian's speed, although very fast, but there are still scattered tourists around to see this scene. Toward the bottom of the scan, face confused.
Are you hallucinating? Or can we really see fairies at the bottom of Jinghu Lake on this day?
After hearing this, a group of tourists immediately lowered their heads and scanned the lake. But as far as my eyes can see, the lake is clear, and there are small fish swimming at the bottom of the lake, let alone human figures, without a hair. There are fairies. This day, Jinghu, is really unusual. There are fairies in the mysterious Big Red City. It's a pity that I didn't see fairies. Next time you come to such a place, you must turn on your mobile phone all the time. In this way, you can see what the legendary fairy looks like. A group of tourists completely boiling, countless people around Tianjin Lake tut wonder, toward the for continuous scanning, is repeatedly cry regret. But what I see seems to be the back of a man. Is it that I read it wrong? Before that, the tourist who saw Yi Tian jump into Tianjin Lake first scratched his head in doubt. Almost all of them suspected that there was something wrong with his eyes. At this moment, Yi Tian, who knows, has been regarded as the fairy in the legend by the tourists outside. Shui Yuzong really lives in a small world. However, this small world is somewhat dilapidated, and its aura is declining. Yi Tian looks up and finds that there are 2 green peaks in Tianjin Lake. Many palace buildings have been built on the peaks, and even white cranes are flying on the foothills. It looks like a fairyland. It's a pity that although this place is not vulgar, its aura reveals a sense of dilapidation. It seems that it has nearly exhausted and wants to be similar to the outside world. There is no doubt that there is something wrong with this small world. But Yi Tian didn't care to pay so much attention at the moment. He looked around. When he saw that there was no water on both sides of the mountain gate, he immediately looked up at many palaces on the mountain and said, "Where are the disciples of Shui Yuzong? Yi Tian has come to visit you." Yi Tian came to visit Shui Yuzong. The sound is like a thunderbolt, a word falls, the whole quiet small world immediately hums, the echo is like a dull thunder. What? How could an outsider enter Shui Yuzong? Without the guidance of Shui Yuzong disciples, how did this guy enter Shui Yuzong through the field? Shui Yuzong has a strict field. No admittance is allowed for idle people. How did this guy get in? A roar not only echoed in the sky of Shui Yuzong, but also echoed in each of their hearts. One by one looked at each other, full of consternation. If not just that sound, vigorous and clear, real and comparable, they almost all suspected that it was their own people who had an auditory hallucination. However, they really can't understand what method Yi Tian used to enter Shui Yuzong so easily without any Shui Yuzong disciples. It's just like that this domain blockade is just in vain in front of Yi Tian. Did Yi Tian enter Shui Yuzong? Originally nervous holding a mobile phone, waiting for Yi Tian to come to Qiqing Mountain, Yunfei and Shaoqing, who contact them by phone, are stunned when they hear this. They did not expect that Yi Tian could easily enter Shui Yuzong without anyone to lead him. But this scene let them in shock, even more relieved. Since Yi Tian can enter the Water Moon sect, it shows that he can save Su Qing from the fire and water probability, much more than they expected. Here comes Yi Tian. At the same time, in the main hall on the top of the mountain, the Lord of Shueiyue sect immediately stood up and strode out of the hall. After looking down the mountain, his face changed. He immediately turned his head and looked into the hall. He looked at a man with black and white hair. He seemed to be a little old, but his face was very smooth. He looked like he was in his 20s, and his eyes were sharp. There is a kind of strange temperament, can't say is always less men. Tangled Way, Elder Ji, now how to do? This person is Ji Changming, the elder of Qingming sect. He is the one who has seen through Su Qing's constitution and wants to marry her and seek to break through the top of heaven. Lord Yen, I don't know what punishment will be imposed on those who break into the mountain gate of Shueiyue sect and the rules of Shueiyue sect. When Ji Changming heard this, he took the wine glass on the table, sipped it, looked at the master of Shueiyue sect, and said with a smile. But he is Yi Tian. When the lord of Shueiyue clan heard this, he immediately looked flustered and said to Ji Changming. In today's Shanchangren world, there are very few people who don't know the name of Yi Tian, especially for these clan leaders. With his own efforts, Yi Tian wiped out the affairs of Taiman, and became a legend of Shanchangren's world, as well as a big stone on top of all the sect leaders. After all, no one knows if Yi Tiannem will one day lift the butcher's knife to their necks since he can destroy the Taiman. Although as early as I had to accept the coercion and agreed to the marriage request of Ji Changming and Su Qing, the Lord of Shueiyue sect was ready for Yi Tianhui to come. Now Yi Naivete's arrival, especially in this mysterious way, can't help but make her panic and panic.
What happened to Yi Tian? I'm still the elder of Qingming sect. Ji Changming didn't wait for Shueiyue master to finish his speech. He raised his hand and interrupted him. Immediately, with a touch of playfulness and indifference in his tone, he said, Master Yan, have you forgotten what you want me to do for you? I don't help you. King Mingzong doesn't help you. Who else can help you in this world?
A word falls, Water Month's own lord immediately silent down, vision changes, finally, revealed a decision. Master, Yi Tian is here, just at the foot of the mountain.
What should we do?
But at this time, Yunfei and Shaoqing walk in a hurry, looking at the Water Moonzong master, looking forward to the road. Lord Yen, these two disciples of yours seem to have only Yi Tian in their eyes.
They have nothing to do with the clan.
Ji Changming heard this, eyebrow slightly yang, looking at the Water Monthong zone, light way.
Don't sow discord here.
Everything my elder martial sister and I do is for the sake of Shueiyue family.
Yi Tian is not easy to get into trouble.
I suggest Elder Ji you'd better make up with him as soon as possible, or you'll regret it. Shaoqing heard this, immediately furious, looking at Ji Changming, hate road. Master, Shaoqing is right.
Yi Tian is not easy to get into trouble. I've played with him.
This man seems to care nothing, but in the world, as long as it's what he wants to do, he will be able to do it, and often will do it more. Taiman's lesson is in advance, and her bones are not completely frozen. She is very worried that if Shuiyuzong really dares to do anything to Yi Tian, then what is waiting for Shuiyuzong is probably Yi Tian's great anger. If she repents at that time, it will be too late.
Don't worry about it anymore.
The ancestral hall has made rules.
Those who intrude into Shueiyue cave will die. The master of Shueiyue sect had a changeable look.
After a long time, he suddenly made a decision in his heart. With a wave of his hand, he said in a loud voice.
Master.
Yunqi was shocked and looked at the master of Shueiyue sect.
She didn't dare to buy the channel. She really didn't expect that the lord of Shueiyue sect would know Yi Tian's anger and still do so? Isn't she not afraid to push Shuiyuzong into the hot con, completely uncomplicated? Please wait for me.
After bowing his hand to Ji Changming, the lord of Shueiyue sect looked at Yunfei and Shaoqing and said, I know you two have deep friendship with Su Chang and Yi Tian.
It's not difficult for me to do it for you. If you don't want to do it to him, you can withdraw by yourself.
Don't worry, I won't do it for you. No, I want to live with Shuiyuzong. Shaoqing heard this, immediately shook his head.
I'm going too.
Cloud Fei is silent a little, also followed to give affirmative answer. Although Shuiyuzong's mountain protection array is very powerful, she thinks that Yi Tian may not be trapped successfully. Maybe Yi Tian will fight back. If he can go there, if there is a good or bad situation, she can ask Yi Tian to intercede and leave a fragrance for Shuiyuzong. Then I'll be here, waiting for your good news. Ji Changming laughed and nodded to the leader of Shueiyue sect.
I hope so.
With a bitter smile, the leader of Shueiyue sect immediately strode out of the hall.
Suzerain, I really didn't lie. Yi Tian's strength is far beyond our estimation. If we fight against him, the end will not be good. And don't you see that? King Mingzong is deliberately using us to attack Yi Tian.
You are not a dazzled man. Why should you be fooled by him? After walking out of the hall door, Yunfei's face, for the first time, lost the extraordinary and worldly atmosphere of not eating people's fireworks. Instead, with anxiety, she advised the lord of Shueiyue sect.
How can I not understand these principles?
The leader of Shuiyuzong gave a bitter smile, then stared at Yunfei's eyes and said, Yunfei, I am in Shuiyuzong.
Your spiritual sense is the most acute. Don't you really find anything? What did you find?
Cloud Fei doubts, immediately the vision move. Wait, Lord, what you say is the circumstance that the aura inside the clan is sharply reduced now? Shuiyuzong's aura is very serious, and it has gradually begun to become equivalent to the outside world. The leader of Shueiyue's sect talked about this, and he had to think about this reason.
What's the lack of aura? It's no more than hard cultivation.
But if you fight against Yi Tian in this way, it will cause great disaster. Yunfei shakes her head, saying that she can't understand Shueiyue's words.
As he said, the lack of aura is nothing more than the slow improvement of cultivation.
But against Yi Tian, you may not even have the chance to improve cultivation. She didn't believe which was more important, and her own patriarch couldn't figure it out.
If only it were that simple. Every thought I have is for the sake of my family.
The leader of Shueiyuzong shook his head bitterly. Immediately, he turned to look down the mountain and said, "Disciples of Shueiyuzong, above the prefecture level, gather quickly and lay the sword array."
Suzerain?
Cloud Fei hears cloth sword array these three words, the facial expression immediately a lin, anxious way. The most powerful method of Shueiyuzong is to obtain the perfect sword array from this small world. If the sword array is opened, even if two heaven-level peaks join hands, they will be killed. Similarly, it also means that once the sword array is opened, it is equivalent to tearing his face with Yi Tian, for fear that he will never die.
Don't say any more. I've made up my mind. The master of Shueiyue's sect shakes his head and interrupts Yunfei's words.
Almost at the same time, a disciple of Shueiyuzong, with confusion on his face, quickly approached the assembly.
Under the guidance of the leader of Shueiyuzong, one disciple lined up and arranged the array. Yunfei, you Shueiyuzong have made up your mind to be my enemy?
At the same time, Yi Tian has been approaching step by step.
When he sees this behind the scenes, he looks at Yunfei in the front row of the crowd and says faintly, "Yi Tian, I'm sorry. I've tried. Unfortunately, I can't help it."
Cloud Fei looked gloomy, looking at Yi Tian, eyes full of guilt color. It was she who called Yi Tian here, but unexpectedly, she let Yi Tian fall into a dangerous situation. Once there was anything good or bad, she was responsible.
It's none of your business.
Yi Tian is so smart that he can see that the decision maker is not Yunfei, otherwise he would not be so stupid as to stand on the opposite side of himself. Yi Tian, my Shueiyuzong has no grudge against you, and I don't care how you enter Shueiyuzong. But as long as you choose to leave now, from now on, my Shueiyuzong and your well water are still independent of each other. At this time, the lord of Shueiyuzong, looking at Yi Tian, arched his fist and said in a deep voice,
"Give me Su Qing, I can leave."
Yi Tian hears the words, calmly looks directly into the eyes of the suzerain master, Light Wei.
Is he here for younger martial sister Su Qing? Is he the boyfriend of younger martial sister Su Qing?
My God, for the sake of younger martial sister Su Qing, I don't hesitate to stand on the opposite side of the two sections.
It's romantic to be the enemy of the whole world.
I envy younger martial sister Su Qing. There are people who care about him so much. I don't know if we can meet such people in the future. When Yi Tian's words fall, the crowd of Shueiyuzong immediately boils. Many disciples whisper, just like a huge bee colony, buzzing.
Moreover, many contents float into Yi Tian's ears, making him cry and laugh for a while.
However, it's not surprising that Shueiyuzong is full of female disciples, and most of them are young girls who are just in love.
Which girl doesn't want to be held in the palm of her hand, and doesn't want to have the experience of saving beauty by heroes?
Now, Yi Tian's appearance, in order to save Su Qing, can be said to meet all the conditions they have for their lover. Needless to say, when Su Qing was young, he wanted to get married to Ji Changming, who had a bad reputation and was a bad old man, which made them feel pity and fear. What happened to Su Qing today? One day, such a tragedy will also appear to them.
Under such circumstances, how can they not add some favor to Yi Tian?
Silence. But just when the scene was noisy and restless, the lord of Shueiyuzong suddenly yelled out. After the scene was quiet, he looked at Yi Tian and said, "All the disciples who join Shueiyuzong have their own requirements. From then on, they will cut off the connection between the world of mortals, only the disciples of Shueiyuzong. I don't care what relationship Su Qing had with you in the past, but now she is only a disciple of Shueiyue's sect. If she wants to take people away from Shueiyue's sect, you can break our sword array first." Lord, you should be merciful. He works so hard for younger martial sister Su Qing.
This is a good man. Please don't use the sword array.
Yes, younger martial sister Su Qing is so smart.
It's just a pity to marry that bad old man Ji Changming.
Please hold high your hand and let your lover get married. Without waiting for Yi Tian to speak, the disciples of Shui Yuzong took the lead in asking for love from the master of Shui Yuzong.
The master of Shui's sect is really stupid.
She thinks that this move has flattered Qingming's sect, but she has lost her heart. Yi Tian listens to this one voice one by one, while feeling speechless, looking at the eyes of the Water Moon clan leader, is already more ridicule and ponder. In Shui Yuzong, all the disciples are girls. Even if these girls have given up with the world of mortals after entering Shui Yuzong, it doesn't mean that they can ignore their own happiness and choose to marry others, not to mention Su Changming's rubbish. Su Qing's situation is not only tragic, but also a wake-up call for them, which gives them a sense of crisis and worries that they will be treated the same way in the future. Now, if they don't help Su Qing, but stand aside and gloat, who will help them when it's their turn? Similarly, the leader of Shui's sect, who insisted on all this, was regarded by many Shui's sect disciples as a cold-blooded person who could sacrifice not only his own interests, but also his disciples' happiness in their whole life just for their own interests and to please others. I in the clan, once you have this kind of perception of the lord of a clan, you will inevitably betray your relatives.
The battle is over.
But the leader of Shui's sect turned a deaf ear to these voices and continued to drink coldly. Although all the disciples of Shui's sect were very dissatisfied with the master's actions, after all, the master's majesty was still there. After her words were dropped, many of the disciples, even though they were unwilling to do so, but they all drew out their swords and stood ready for Yi Tian.
Zheng. The sword array was just a combination.
In an instant, the magic power and sword spirit of each disciple of Shui Yuzong suddenly gathered. With a violent warbling sound, the sword Qi soared to the sky and pointed to Yi Tian.
Although Yi Tian hasn't made any moves yet, he already has a kind of tingling feeling like being criticized. There's something about this sword array.
Yi Tian glanced at the sword array, and his eyes changed slightly. He felt that the sword array of Shui Yuzong was a kind of sword array that had been completely inherited, connecting the sword meanings of all the disciples.
This kind of array, even if it is put into the square-inch spirit realm, is absolutely not easy.
It's a pity that these disciples of Shui Yuzong are all from Leisurely Mountain, not from sword cultivation. Under such circumstances, the sword formation formed by them is not vulgar, but the strength is extremely limited. Otherwise, if there are so many swords to build the formation, just that kind of sword will make his soul suppressed and die on the spot. However, it also made Yi Tian realize that these Shanchang Zongmen cannot be underestimated.
They can continue to this day. More or less, they all have some means of pressing the bottom of the box. If Shui Yuzong is still like this, then Qingmingzong must have a more solid foundation, which should not be underestimated. Yi Tian, I'll give you one last chance.
Now when I leave here, I can choose that nothing has happened. Watermonth Zongju gaze at Yi Tian's eyes, word by word, deep voice.
I also give you a choice.
Now spread out the sword array and hand over Su Qing.
I can take it as if nothing happened.
Yi Tianpinging looks at the Water Moon Zong master, does not give up, the attitude is equally peaceful. In that case, there is no possibility of concession. The Water Moon master's face sank, and he said coldly, sword.
Zheng. Zheng.
Zheng. In a flash, all the disciples of Shui Yuzong used their magic power and waved their swords. Suddenly, all the swords were connected. Under the effect of the array, they suddenly turned into a huge sword and swept down towards Yi Tian. That kind of sword spirit, terrible, straight let a person feel, mind and soul, will be crushed. Yi Tian felt that if he was just a mountain person, even if he was the top of the sky level, he would lose his life under this blow. However, to the disappointment of the master of Shui's sect, he was not a mountain man, and his cultivation was far beyond the peak of heaven, but reached the 6th floor of the cave. This sword array, as long as it is not a joint display of real sword practitioners, has no significance to him at all. Such a sword array, if it falls into your hands, is just an outrageous thing. If you use a sword in front of me, I'll show you what real kendo is. Yi Tianlang laughs, and his mind moves. The fierce flying sword suddenly appears. Next time, he runs the idea of Sui Huang Temple directly. The light of the sword is as bright as the sun, and cuts it to the huge sword. However, his sword, in front of the huge sword, looks so small, like a tiny drop in the sea. The huge sword is like a mountain, and the flying sword is like a drop in the ocean. However, the smaller flying sword is more shocking than the giant sword. Flying sword. God, he has a flying sword. I'm not hallucinating, Feijian.
Someone really owns Feijian. How powerful is he, that he can even have such a powerful thing as the flying sword? All the disciples of Shui Yuzong are boiling, looking at Yi Tian's roaring sword. Their faces are dull. Although the tourists of Qicheng Mountain call them fairies when they see them once in a while. But only their own hearts know that they are indeed stronger than ordinary people, but their power is limited. At least, they can't fly with swords like the fairies in the legend, and they can't accompany the blue sky and white clouds. But now, Yi Tian is in front of them, showing the real skill of flying sword. Such a picture, how can they not feel shocked? Kong.
When a group of disciples of Shueiyue sect were shocked, Yi Tian's flying sword and the huge sword spirit of Shueiyue sword array collided with each other. Accompanied by a song of gold and iron in Qingyue, an unimaginable scene appeared. Yi Tian's sword, like a boat in the waves, was a big sword that directly broke the sword spirit. It makes thousands of pieces of sword chi and spreads out to all directions.
It's as ethereal as rain.
Poof! A disciple of Shui Yuzong suddenly retreated and fell on the steps. He vomited blood, his face was pale and his breath was gray. Not only that, in each of their faces and eyes, but also full of incredible color. One sword, break the sword array. Such a means, if not seen with their own eyes, who can believe that it will really happen in front of them? What is powerful? This is the real power.
What is domineering? This is the real domineering. What is Jinxian? This is the real near immortal. Choosing to stand on the opposite side of me is the biggest mistake in your life.
Yi Tian looks at the front with the same figure, pale face, and a bright red water moon sect leader hanging on the corner of his mouth. He says coldly, "The Shueiyue sword array is really good, but it depends on whose hand it is. If it's a group of sword practitioners, then even he has to avoid the edge. But unfortunately, it's just a group of friars of Shueiyue sect who use the sword array.
They don't understand the heart and the meaning of the sword. They don't even have the energy of the sword. What they can do is simply to add up. How can this method be compared with that of him who has a penetrating heart and a strong sense of the sword? I can only break it with one sword."
Water Monthsong's cheek, full of bitterness, eyes complex looking at Yi Tian. She knew that Yi Tian was very powerful, but even so, she still did not expect that Yi Tian was so powerful that it was amazing. One sword breaks through the Shueiyue sword array. How can those Shueiyue sect disciples, even if she didn't see it with her own eyes, dare to believe that this kind of thing would really happen? What else do you have? Take it out together. Yi Tian looked down at the lord of Shueiyue sect and continued to say coldly, "Master, I only ask you to kill me and save the lives of the other disciples of Shueiyue sect." Hearing this, the leader of Shueiyue sect looked at Yi Tian with pleading face and said to him with trembling, "Shueiyue sword array is the most powerful means of Shueiyue sect. If this method is useless to Yi Tian, then other means, even if they are taken out, are just making people laugh. In the face of such absolute overwhelming power, the so-called struggle is just a kind of futility. Rather than this, it is better to plead for each other's sympathy and sympathy. Master Yi, she is not a bad person. Please don't kill him." At this time, Shaoqing rushed out of the crowd, knelt down on one knee in front of Yi Tian, raised his head and prayed in a sad voice. "Yi Tian, please, let go of my master. She is also under duress. I can use her personality to guarantee that she is not a villain." Not only is Shaoqing, Yunfei also toward Yi Tian, hands clasping fist, respectful cry, pray, hope Yi Tian can change his mind. "Master, please, let the Lord go. She is not a villain. She is just forced to do something she has to do." With the two of them taking the lead, the rest of the disciples of Shueiyue sect also knelt down on their knees. Their faces were sad, and they prayed to Yi Tian, hoping that he would not take the life of the leader of Shueiyue sect. Although the leader of Shueiyue sect did not do well in the case of Su Qing, on weekdays, he was very good to the disciples of Shueiyue sect. You know, most of the disciples of Shui Yuzong are actually abandoned baby girls. She brought them back from the orphanage and joined the big family of Shuiyuzong, which gave them a sense of family that was very difficult to get in this life. The suzerain masters are not only their suzerain masters, but also their teachers and mothers. Therefore, at this moment, they can't help pleading for the Lord of Shuiyue sect, hoping that she can live.
Who said I was going to kill?
My purpose of this trip is very simple, only one thing, that is to end the marriage. As long as you terminate the marriage, I can see what happened before in the face of Yunfei and Shaoqing, as if nothing had happened.
Yi Tian looks at this scene, light way. Don't kill?
All the disciples of Shuiyuzong heard the words and looked at Yi Tian in amazement.
Yi Tian's answer was really unexpected.
Even Yunfei and Shaoqing are stunned. They don't expect that their face is so big.
They can't help feeling flattered.
However, apart from the fact that they have a good relationship with him, once he kills the leader of Shuiyue's sect, they will turn into enemies.
Another reason is that Yi Tian is never a murderer.
If he can solve a problem peacefully, he is not willing to fight at all. Unfortunately, in this world, there are too many people who can't see the situation clearly and have a fluke in their heart.
There are always some people who force him to put things right. I can't count the marriage.
Elder Ji Changming of Qingming sect is in the meeting hall on the top of the mountain.
You need to explain it to him personally.
Looking at the look of the disciples around, the master of Shuiyue sect sighed and immediately saluted Yi Tian.
Let me explain to him? Does he deserve it?
Whether he agrees or not, I'll cut it with one sword.
Yi Tian sneers.
With a move, the fierce sword flies in front of him and follows him. He takes a step and then stands on the sword. Immediately, his body is like streamer, and the sword flies to the meeting hall on the top of the mountain. He didn't kill innocent people indiscriminately, but it's not too little to kill one of the dregs of Qingningzone, and it's not too much to kill a pair of dregs. Needless to say, Ji Changming knew that Su Qing was the one he protected, and he even dared to attempt to commit a conspiracy. That's why he didn't pay attention to him, so he naturally needs to be severely punished.
Imperial sword. I'm not wrong. Besides flying swords, he can also defend swords?
My God, he can fly with his sword.
Master Yi, what is his realm and how powerful he is? We want to stand on the opposite side of such a powerful elder? Isn't that death?
The appearance of this scene made a group of Shuiyuzong disciples look at the sky, and their eyes were full of shock and envy. The flying of Imperial sword, which is the true legend, is the means of the Immortals.
Now it appears in Yi Tian's hands, how can they not be surprised?
In front of Yi Tian's amazing strength, they are called fairies, which is a big joke. In the same way, not long ago, they chose to stand on the opposite side of such a powerful top expert, and even fiercely fought against him.
What's the difference between that kind of action and self-seeking death? Zheng.
But just less than 2 minutes later, Yi Tian's imperial sword came to the sky above the meeting hall. He looked down at the magnificent sight and said coldly, Ji Changming, get out.
Ji Changming, get out.
A word fell, and the sound was like thunder, which made the heads of a group of Shuiyuzong disciples hum. But compared with the shock brought by the sound wave, the waves in their minds were more terrible, just like the tsunami.
Who is Ji Changming?
He is the top master of heaven and the elder of Qingming sect. This kind of existence is absolutely one of the top figures of the pyramid among the people on the mountain.
No matter which sect you go to, no matter where you go, you have to be held and offered.
Especially for the small sect like Shuiyue sect, his words are even more effective than the patriarch. Otherwise, Ji Changming proposed to marry Su Qing, and the master of Shuiyue would not dare to take a breath of air.
Even if he was unwilling, he could only agree.
But at this moment, it is such a superior existence, but Yi Tian is so whooping, just like whooping pig and dog.
What is called strong? This is absolutely worthy of the strong. The sound at Yi Tian he came to Shuiyuzong.
At this time, Su Qing, who was practicing in the secret of Shuiyuzong, suddenly felt that she heard a shout in her ear, and the sound sounded more familiar, which made her open her eyes and look in the direction of the sound.
No, it can't be him. He and I have already lost our friendship.
He won't care whether I live or die. But immediately, Su Qing's face showed a touch of bitterness and shook his head, thinking that it was his own auditory hallucination.
However, she can't understand why Yi Tianming is the one she should hate, but most of the time, she can't summon up the courage to hate Yi Tian. Moreover, sometimes, she even thinks that if she could promise Yi Tian long ago and stay with him, everything would be different. In that case, her father would not betray Yi Tian's parents in order to save himself, and everything would be changed. But she also understood that all this was just her fantasy. Time had passed, and everything could not turn back. This situation can be recalled, but at that time has been lost. Ignorant, you just killed a Taemin. Do you really think you are a character? How dare you shout in front of me at this time? Ji Changming heard Yi Tian's words, and his face was as gloomy as the bottom of a pot. He walked out of the hall and looked at Yi Tian, gnashing his teeth and saying coldly. His identity is definitely one of the top groups of people in the mountain. Even as a congenital, as the leader of Qingming's sect, Lu Bufan does not need to be respectful in front of him, but at least he is treated equally. But now, Yi Tian is shouting at him, such as calling pigs and dogs. This kind of humiliation is really unbearable to him. Killing you is like killing a dog. Yi Tianping looks directly at Ji Changming and says faintly. But having said that, Yi Tian saw that his sword was in the sky, and his face was completely different. Ji Changming didn't feel strange about it. It's obvious that Lu Bufan has mastered the art of sword. Even before Lu Bufan, some people in Qingming's sect had this skill. The disciples of Qingming's sect don't know these secrets, but Lu Bufan, as the elder, naturally doesn't. Kill me like a dog? Killing me is like killing a dog. Ji Changming was furious and his voice became louder and louder. At last, it was like a piece of thunder rushing over the sky. Since he set foot on the road of cultivation, he has never suffered such unbearable humiliation. No one has ever dared to despise me like this. Younger generation, you have to pay the price of bleeding for your rampancy. Ji Changming gritted his teeth and immediately reached out to grab a huge bow engraved with many dragon patterns. He pointed to Yi Tian and said in a loud voice. Hiss. Next, he opened the full moon, the string like thunder, an arrow toward Yi Tian shot away, arrow light roaring, as if a rainbow, and more wind elements rolling on the arrow vibration. It looks like this arrow, together with the sun, can kill. Worthy of being the elder of Qingming's sect, so strong. The disciples of Shui Yuzong were shocked by Ji Changming's attack. This bow, in your hand, is wasted. Yi Tian gazes at Ji Changming's brilliant bow and marvels in his heart. This bow is definitely a top-quality spirit soldier. It is the first choice for long-distance combat. It can burst out powerful power, which is more than 100 times stronger than guns. Moreover, what's more amazing is that this bow, as Yi Tian can see, is not damaged at all, which is even more valuable. This leads him to infer that Qingming sect has definitely excavated a lot of cultivation relics in the past few years, and the treasures obtained from them must be countless, which is not comparable to him. Even those who come here can't be compared with Qingming sect. Shwa! Almost at the same time of exclamation, Yi Tian suddenly reaches out and grabs the sharp arrow. Ha ha ha, you dare to take my arrow with your hand. You really don't know what life and death are. At the same time, seeing Yi Tian's action, Ji Changming looks up and laughs wildly. This sharp arrow, surrounded by wind yuan, presents a top shape and is extremely swift. Even if it is the peak of the sky level, it does not dare to attack the front. But now, Yi Tian dares to grab the arrow with his hand. In this way, the only result waiting for him is that the hand that grabs the arrow is cut into pieces by the spiral wind yuan. Yes, but at this time, Yi Tian's hand is already out, just holding the arrow body. On the body of the arrow, a series of spiral wind elements suddenly fly out and sweep away the hand that grabs the sharp arrow to Yi Tian. They want to cut their palms and turn them into rain of flesh and blood. But at this time, people feel that the incredible scene appeared. I saw that when the spiral wind yuan swept away towards Yi Tian's hand trembled slightly. In an instant, a strong force swept out. When he touched the spiral wind yuan, he fell apart and scattered, as if it was a breeze. How is that possible? In a flash, Ji Changming's proud smile suddenly stagnated, looking at Yi Tian above the sky in disbelief. This divine bow he has is extraordinary. When he uses his magic power to push and shoot a sharp arrow,
he will naturally be threatened by Feng Yuan. He once competed with Lu Bufan, but even in Lu Bufan's realm, he can't directly attack the spiral Feng Yuan and will be damaged by it. But now, Yi Tian defeated Feng Yuan with a pair of meat palms, which is incredible.
And this also means that Yi Tian's strength may be better than Lu Bufan's? You give me an arrow, and I'll give you an arrow.
At this time, Yi Tian's wrist gently shakes, and the sharp arrow with the piercing sound cuts through the sky and sweeps away to Ji Changming.
Hum. Hum. Hum.
The sharp arrow shuttles along the body of the arrow. The spiral wind element appears light cyan, which is even stronger than when Ji Changming pulled the bow.
Get out of my way. Ji Changming's eyes twitched, and he was in a complete hurry.
He swung the magic bow in his hand and wanted to block it. Hiss! However, what made him die was that the speed of the sharp arrow at this moment was as amazing as the real light. Before he could stop it, he watched helplessly. The sharp arrow came to him with a spiral cyclone. Let him try to swing body, dodge, but ultimately cannot get rid of, there is no chance.
Poof! The next breath, the sharp arrow into Ji Changming's chest, a group of blood, accompanied by Ji Changming unwilling to hiss, suddenly bloom. Kung!
Finally, the arrow penetrates his body and penetrates into the ground heavily. The blood gushes and drags his body to the ground heavily.
Spiral Wind Yuan is terrible.
It directly penetrates his whole chest, and there is a hole the size of a bowl. His heart is torn to pieces. Even if the immortal Daruo is in the dust, he can't live again. The elder of Qingming sect, the peak monk of heaven, was killed by one arrow. Just one blow, he died and was removed from the world forever. Everyone is shocked, silent, just looking at Yi Tian standing on the sky. Killing you is like killing a dog. Heaven-level peak, elder of Qingming sect, one hit. All the people present were stunned and petrified. Ji Changming's strength was so terrible, but now he was killed. A generation of tycoons died and died. This scene is just like a myth, which is unbelievable. Yi Tian's sword stands upright in the void, the strong wind blows, his clothes are hunting, just like gods and demons in the dust, and the enemy's blood splashes on the spot. This scene is so terrible and amazing. There is no doubt that it will be a picture that people will never forget. Blood flow, spread, gorgeous red, dazzling incomparable, Ji Changming, forever removed from the world. There was no one to speak, not even to breathe aloud. There was a silence around. This scene was too shocking and shocked all the people in the room. Is he invincible? I don't know how long it took for all the disciples of Shui Yuzong to wake up from a dream and make a lot of noise. All of them looked up at Yi Tian's back and had the same doubts in their hearts. Now, can you bring people out? At this time, Yi Tian fell from the sky, turned his head and looked at the Lord of Shueiyue's sect, looked directly into her eyes, and said faintly. Although Yi Tian did not show any authority, he still made the suzerain master tremble and look flustered. You, go and invite Su Cheng. After that, she nodded respectfully to Yi Tian, then turned and looked at the other Shui Yuzong disciples, and said in a deep voice. Yi Tian comes here because of Su Cheng and kills people forcefully. She is not sure about the relationship between Yi Tian and Su Cheng. She thinks it is necessary to treat them respectfully. Yes. The disciple of Shui Yuzong nodded his head and trotted to Su Cheng's position. A moment later, she came to a valley full of clouds and spirits. Younger martial sister Qingqing. In a short time, she rushed to the position of Su Cheng's closed-door cultivation. When she saw Su Qingqing's closed-eyes cultivation, she looked happy and said, Elder martial sister Yao. When Su Cheng heard the sound, he opened his eyes and would salute the visitors respectfully. Younger martial sister Qingqing, don't do that. I can't stand your big gift. Seeing this, elder martial sister Yao held Su Cheng in a hurry. Then she said with a smile, and maybe I'll have younger martial sister Qingqing in the future. You can help me a lot and give me a chance. Elder martial sister Yao, don't make fun of me. With a bitter smile, Su Cheng shook his head, and his eyes were full of gloom. Although she did not refuse Shui Yuzong's proposal to marry Ji Changming, it does not mean that she is willing to do so. It's not to say that they are two people who have no feelings at all.
In addition, they just use her as a cauldron and don't care about her life or death. No matter which young girl is, she won't be willing to commit herself to an old man. Therefore, hearing this, she instinctively thought that the other party was making fun of her and Ji Changming. Younger martial sister Qingqing, you are mistaken. Elder martial sister, I have absolutely no intention of making fun of you.
Seeing Su Qing's expression, elder martial sister Yao quickly waved her hand. After a sincere sentence, she woke up like a dream, patted the back of her head and said, "Why did I forget to tell you, younger martial sister? You don't have to marry that bad old man Ji Changming in the future."
No marriage? Su Qing looked at elder martial sister Yao in amazement.
His head was buzzing. He could hardly believe his ears. The leader of Shueiyue's sect had been very resolute. At the beginning, she had fought against it, hoping to change it, but the result was no different. Even, Cloud Fei put forward Yi Tian's advice. Water Month's own lord just hesitated a little, once again adhered to their own views. Under such circumstances, elder martial sister Yao said that she didn't have to marry that bad old man Ji Changming anymore. How could she feel unbelievable? Elder martial sister Yao, don't lie to me. After a long time, Su Qing shook his head and said slowly. What do I cheat you to do, Ji Changming? He has. Hearing this, elder martial sister Yao quickly said that she was about to explain the whole story to Su Qing. But as soon as the words came to her mouth, her eyes suddenly changed and she said with a smile, Master, let you go. You'd better see for yourself. Surprise? Su Qing heard this, eyes change, her heart suddenly gave birth to a bold guess, but also think of the previous such as magic. Listen to that voice. Is it Yi Tian? But how could he care about his own life? How can you care about your future? Younger martial sister, let's go. Elder martial sister Yao takes Su Qing's arm with a smile. She doesn't give him any chance to speak at all, so she goes to the meeting hall. A little later, they went to the gate of Shuiyuzong meeting hall. Su Qing saw from a distance that the gate of the hall was full of people and was chirping. Sister Qingqing is here. Seeing this, elder martial sister Yao quickly covered her mouth and coughed twice, shouting to the crowd in front of her. Younger martial sister Qingqing is really lucky. If only I could have such a good chance for her. Heroes come down from the sky to save beauty. They are willing to have one heart and never leave each other. Younger martial sister Qingqing is really low-key. Knowing such a strong person, she has always been low-key and never divulged anything. When they heard the speech, they immediately turned their heads and focused on Su Qing. They turned their eyes to both sides, showing away. At the same time, their eyes were full of envy and their mouth was full of praise. Envy. Praise. These many eyes, many words, let Su Qing just feel that his feet are like stepping on the clouds. There is a light feeling. Since she joined Shuiyuzong, she has never been treated with such a high profile and envious treatment. Although Shuiyuzong is not a place to treat new disciples harshly, no one has paid too much attention to her younger martial sister, let alone today. It's him. But compared with these eyes, what makes Su Qing's heart waver is the thin but resolute figure in the depth of the crowd corridor. That kind of firmness makes people feel that even if the sky collapses, it can be easily carried by him, supporting a stable and sheltered sky. For a moment, all the grievances are filled in my heart, so that Su Qing wants to cry, and even, she wants to rush into Yi Tian's arms and cry happily. But the next breath, she finally stopped, just looking at Yi Tian's figure, lips moving, can't say a word. She understood that between herself and Yi Tian, she couldn't go back to her original appearance. Neither she nor Yi Tian could go back. Let's break up. Shueiyuezong thought that Su Qing had something to say, which was inconvenient for him to say in front of the crowd. He waved his hand and took a group of disciples and scattered around. Yunfei nods to Su Qing and smiles, while Shaoqing looks at Su Qing enviously. Every girl has a certain vanity, including her. What Su Qing has just accepted, she also hopes that one day, she can meet her. Thank you. Su Qing waited until everyone left, staring at Yi Tian, silent for a long time, 1,000 words, finally condensed into a sentence. You're welcome. Yi Tianping shook his head quietly and said faintly. I didn't expect that you would come and help me. You can rest assured that I will repay you. Su Qing was silent for a long time, then looked at Yi Tian's eyes and said slowly.
Don't think so much. I sympathize with you, not anything else. Moreover, Ji Changming knows that I have told Yunfei not to let anyone covet your looting qualification, but still do it. It's a provocation to me. I can't ignore it.
Yi Tian shook his head and said calmly, as for the reward, you don't have to think so much.
I don't need your reward.
In the future, you just take care of yourself. As I said, only when you are strong enough, can you eliminate all this and be fearless of others' coercion on you in the future.
You already know my qualifications?
Have you specially told Yunfei? Su Qing was surprised to see Yi Tian, and his eyes were full of confusion and surprise. She never knew such a situation.
If it wasn't for Yi Tian's slip of the tongue today, she might never know.
Yi Tian already knows her qualifications, and has specially told Yunfei.
Not bad. Anyway, you and I know each other. I don't know many people in this world. You are one.
When Yi Tian hears the sound and sees the expression on Su Qing's face, he also knows that he is saying something wrong.
It's easy for Su Qing to think more.
But the words have already been spoken, and he doesn't deny them.
He nods and says. Su Qing is silent.
He just stares at Yi Tian, whose tears are constantly circling in his eyes. These things, she completely did not think of. She originally thought, Yunfei and Shueiyuezong in front of Yi Tian, just simply hoped to use Yi Tian's power, to help her escape this disaster, but did not expect, actually had been specially entrusted by Yi Tian.
What does that mean? Does it mean that Yi Tian cares about himself?
Su Qing's shoulders twitched and her face changed. Everything in the past appeared in her heart. How she hoped that time could go back to the time when she lived in Yi Tian's rental house. That short period of time is definitely the most relaxed and happy time in her life.
But there is no doubt that all this has gone back. Although she and Yi Tian are not strangers, they can't walk together. I will repay you.
After a long time, Su Qing raised his hand and wiped away the tears from the corner of his eyes. Looking at Yi Tian, his voice choked, but he was determined. I said I don't need your reward.
Yi Tian shook his head and said calmly.
He helped Su Qing, but he just obeyed his heart. He never thought that he would get something in return from Su Qing.
No, I don't want to owe you anything. Su Qing obstinately shakes his head and looks at Yi Tian with the same determination. All the things have gone back.
She hates Yi Tian, but she can't erase Yi Tian's figure from her heart.
Therefore, she doesn't want to owe Yi Tian anymore.
In this way, she can make Yi Tian's figure as deep as possible. Just, she does not know, oneself have what can repay Leaf Day. Yi Tian's accomplishments are beyond her reach, so there's no need to think about them. As for the elixirs, I'm afraid what she has in her hand is less than 1/10,000th of Yi Tian's. If you want to repay her with them, it's no big difference to daydream. She suddenly found that in front of Yi Tian, she seemed to have nothing.
That kind of feeling make her panic, but also let her completely realize now she and Yi Tian really seems to have become two world people, but different from when she was in the university. At that time, although she looked down on Yi Tian, they did not pull too open, but now, they are like one in the clouds, one in the mire, no longer intersect. These are your own decisions. What you want to do has nothing to do with me. Yi Tian shook his head.
After a light sentence, he said calmly, it's time for me to go. Su Qing opens his mouth, but he can't say a word.
Finally, he can only stand in the same place and look at Yi Tian's back.
He is more and more far away from himself.
Master Yi, stay.
But at this time, the Master of Water and Moon suddenly rushed over from a distance, looking at Yi Tian and praying.
Do you have any advice?
The Leaf Day hears speech, calmly looking at Water Month's own lord, Light Wei. He didn't deal with the leader of Shueiyue's sect. He also understood that even if the other party was the leader of the same sect, she still had to submit to the power of Qingming's sect.
Some things she didn't want to do.
But pity was pity. If the leader of Shueiyue's sect didn't know what to do, she didn't mind giving some color to the opposite party to let her know whether she was provoking herself or Qingming's sect. The people who lived in the village were even more terrible.
Master, I'm not trying to stop you. I just hope that you can reach out and help us out.
I swear that as long as you help me, I can promise you anything. The leader of Shui Yuzong kowtowed and begged. His knees fell to the ground, and his face was full of weakness.
Fire and water? What happened to Shui Yuzong? But worried about King Mingzong's backfire? Don't worry.
I killed Ji Changming and beat King Mingzong in the face. If they want to take revenge, let them come to me. Hearing this, Yi Tian frowned and glanced at the leader of Shueiyue sect.
Not these. The leader of Shueiyue sect shakes his head in a hurry.
After an explanation, he looks into Yi Tian's eyes and says, Master, you must have sensed that the aura of Shueiyue sect is changing.
It's not only dissipating, but also bursting, isn't it? It's true. Yi Tian heard the sound and nodded.
This kind of situation of Shui Yuzong has been felt since he entered here, but at that time, he thought that it was because Shui Yuzong occupied a broken small world, so this kind of situation appeared. But now it seems that things are not so simple, but there is something else.
You don't know, sir.
The little world where Shueiyue sect lives today was originally called Shueiyue Cave.
It was a relic of an ancient sect. After being discovered by our early ancestors, Shueiyue sect was built here. Generations of disciples have been practicing here.
But just last year, an earthquake occurred in Qicheng Mountain, which seems to have damaged the field structure of Shueiyue Cave. It's very beautiful. There is a sharp drop in qi and a sense of destruction.
Even cracks appear in some areas.
It seems that there is a danger of cracking at any time. Hearing this, the leader of Shueiyue sect quickly told Ji Tian the cause and effect of the incident, and then said bitterly, the reason why I promised Ji Changming to marry Su Qing was also because of this incident, because Ji Changming assured me that Qingming sect could help me solve this problem.
I see.
When Yi Tian heard the words, he nodded slightly, and his face showed the color of understanding. At this moment, he finally understood why the leader of Shueiyue sect didn't look like a vicious person, and when the sword array was destroyed, the disciples of Shueiyue sect begged for her, but they made Su Qing marry. Originally, they were thinking about the safety of the sect. We need to know that such small worlds as Shui Yuzong are created by strong existence, directly tearing space and supporting field. Once the strength of the field fails, it will lead to the collapse of the space.
At that time, everything in the small world in the past will be destroyed.
That kind of strength, even the monks who are as powerful as the infant realm, cannot escape and will be crushed into powder. Needless to say, it's Su Qing and others who live in the Watermoon Cave at the moment. What's more, there is no sign of the collapse of the space. Maybe one moment ago, it seems that it can persist, but the next breath, it will burst. It can be said that today's Shui Yuzong is like sitting on a volcano that has begun to smoke.
Maybe one day it will break up and destroy people. Master, please help Shui Yuzong.
As long as you are willing to help us through this difficulty, no matter what you want me to do, I am willing to take my life to thank you for what happened before.
Immediately after that, Shui Yuzong sincerely apologized and immediately put his head against the ground tightly, imploring to Yi Tianshan. Shueiyue Zayadanshan is the origin of Shueiyue sect.
It is also the place where they were born and grew up.
It is the maintenance of Shueiyue sect. If it's destroyed here, then Shui Yuzong basically means it won't exist anymore.
After all, in this world, it is impossible to create another small world for them to practice because of the collapse of Shueiyue and Zayadanshan. Similarly, not in the small world, but in the outer world, even in the deep mountains and forests, it is not enough for a sect. At that time, if it was not for this reason, she would not have been pinched to death by Ji Changming, and let her go against her heart and do such a thing.
Now, Ji Changming is dead. Before that, Yi Tian broke through the opening field and entered Shui Yuzong without any leadership.
This makes her feel that maybe God has opened a door for her while closing one for herself.
As long as Yi Tian can help Shui Yuzong, she is willing to thank Yi Tian for her death.
I can see it, but I can't guarantee that I can help you. However, if I can help you, I will not help you without any reason.
There are conditions. Hearing the words, Yi Tian pondered a little.
He immediately looked at the leader of Shueiyue sect and said, if I can help you stabilize this small world, I hope you can replace me with Shueiyue sword array. Water Moon sword array, even in Yi Tian's eyes, is very good. The reason why he can break it is not because the sword array is not good, but because the strength of the people who said it is not good. If this sword array can be used by a group of sword practitioners with flying swords, I'm afraid even the old monsters in Huaying can't easily attack. Shuyuzon, without the method of sword cultivation, cannot get so many flying swords, but Yi Tian is different. He has many cultivation methods, sword cultivation method is also among them. As for the flying sword, it's even simpler. As long as he can get enough wind-catching stones, then with his level of refining tools, he will naturally have as many flying swords as he wants. After all, he now wants to rebuild the Miluo Palace on Earth, a door of cultivation. Naturally, he needs to have a mountain guard array to guard the mountain gate. He does have a lot of mountain protection arrays on hand, but those arrays are too complicated and demanding.
They are aimed at the monks of Yupu realm and the square-inch spiritual realm.
They have very high requirements for the cultivation realm of the monks and the materials of the unknown field.
With his current realm and background, there is no possibility to achieve them.
Therefore, those high-level field arrays are very important. Now, it's not as suitable as her water moon sword array.
The
leader of Shueiyue's sect was uncertain when he heard the words. Shueiyue's sword array is the secret of Shueiyue's sect. If it is handed over to others, there is no doubt that she is the sinner of Shueiyue's sect.
She has no face to see the ancestors of Shueiyue's sect in Jiuquan.
But what she knows better is that if she doesn't take out the Shueiyue sword array, what is waiting for Shueiyue's sect is the end. Once the field collapses and Xiaoshiandi collapses, not only the ancestors of Shueiyue's sect, but the whole Shueiyue's sect will disappear.
It is self-evident which is more important than the other.
Well, I promise you. But I also have a request. The water moon sword formation can only be passed on to you. It can't be passed on to a second person. After a long silence, the master of Shueiyue's sect finally made a decision.
Looking at Yi Tian, he said in a deep voice.
Don't worry, the law doesn't spread to 6 ears.
Yi Tian nodded with a smile and gave a positive answer.
The water moon sword array, which he got, was just for the sake of transition. As long as his cultivation level was improved, he would improve the array of Miluo Palace again.
Thank you, master. Let's make a deal.
The lord of Shueiyue's sect got the affirmative answer from Yi Tian, and immediately took a long breath of relief. Then he got up and asked Yi Tian, saying, Master, please follow me. This is the eye of Shueiyue's small world field.
Yi Tian nodded and followed the leader of Shueiyue's sect to the eye position of Shueiyue's Xiaoshiandi.
In fact, to tell you the truth, he is curious about Shueiyue's small world. He wants to see who opened this small world and whether he can find out the connection between ancient friars and Fengsuan spiritual realm from the situation of this small world.
Soon, they went all the way to the top of Shuyuzong mountain.
On the top of the mountain, there stands a building, which is a Taoist temple.
It doesn't look grand, or even small.
It's like a small ancestral hall of a poor family. But along this Taoist temple, it exudes a feeling of experiencing the invasion and vicissitudes of time, such as the baptism of endless time. Moreover, when Yi Tian approached, he found that the rocks used to build this Taoist temple were all a kind of strange divine gold. It was only because the time was too long, the inherent divinity dissipated, leaving only the characteristics of the material itself, standing upright in the heaven and earth, and never collapsing, that it became the ancient appearance of today.
But even so, Yi Tian was surprised that such a complete ancient monk building could be preserved on the earth.
As he stepped into the building, he glanced and immediately saw that there were many golden bird seal characters carved on it.
Although it was ancient, it had the rudiment of today's Chinese square characters.
The big star breaks, the heaven and the earth collapse, floats in the starry sky, and then molds the water moon and the fragrance in the cave. Yi Tian walks into the building, carefully identifies the words, and finally gets a message from above. This few words, in a twinkling of an eye, let the heart of Yi Tian surging waves, a heart-thumping crazy jump more than. Ancestral star split, heaven and earth collapse, ride the floating and starry sky, recreate the water moon cave. This passage not only conveys a lot of shocking information, but also reveals that the ancient friars on the earth already have the ability to walk through the starry sky. What's more, Yi Tian is shocked by the 4 words water moon cave. He was really familiar with the water moon cave. It was one of the best places in the square-inch spiritual realm, and it was as good as the green hell. At the beginning, when he was in Fengsuan spirit realm, he knew about Shueiyue Cave. According to the news he heard at that time, he said that Shueiyue Cave had a very long history, and it was rumored that they were related to the vast starry sky. They were a group of vagrants who came through the starry sky and took root in Fengsuan spirit realm to recreate the sky. At that time, although Tian had an intersection with Shueiyue Dong Tian, he didn't know anything about the existence of monks on the earth. Naturally, he thought that there was no intersection between the other side and himself, but now, the content of Shuiyuzong's Taoist temple is in a flash, which makes him connect this place with Shuiyudanshan in the square-inch spiritual realm. Because of some crises, the friars of Shueiyue Cave, who opened up a small world here, finally arrived at Fengsuan spiritual realm, where they recreated Shueiyue Cave and became one of the most powerful giants. A paragraph of text, let Yi Tian suddenly enlightened, there is a kind of earth and the other end of the sky square-inch spirit domain, connected together. Does this also mean that the two worlds of the earth and the water moon cave are not isolated, but there is another way to connect them apart from the law of coming? Since the ancients could cross the starry sky and go to the square-inch spiritual realm, maybe they could follow the same route and return to the square-inch spiritual realm? Does the content here exist since you found the water moon cave? After a long time, Yi Tianxiang endured the surprise in his heart and looked at the lord of Shueiyue sect and said slowly, "Yes, these characters have existed here since Shuiyuzong came into China. The first generation of patriarchs also named us Shuiyuzong because of this character. Now, in the 4 seasons, we will come here to worship the monks who used to live in the water moon cave." The master of Shueiyue sect nodded in a hurry and explained respectfully to Yi Tian. However, her eyes, but full with the color of confusion. She is very intelligent. Naturally, she can see that Yi Tian seems to attach great importance to this passage in the Taoist temple. Otherwise, he would not have such a big reaction just after seeing it. However, what makes her incomprehensible is that this paragraph of writing has existed in Shuiyuzong for countless years. Countless masters of the past dynasties have studied this paragraph of writing and tried to find out the secret contained in it, but they have not done so. Why can Yi Tian do what these people can't do so easily? So it is. These contents are not invented by later generations, but have always existed. Yi Tian sighed in his heart and became more convinced of his guess. And in his mind, there are many associations. The earth is vast. In the past, there was definitely more than one sect in Shueiyue Dongtian. Since Shueiyue Cave crosses the Star Road and goes to Fengsuan spiritual realm by floating in starry sky, will the rest of the clan, like Shueiyue Cave, also shuttle through the sky, roam the Star Road and enter Fengsuan spiritual realm, leaving behind incense inheritance? They are not the local sects of Fengsuan Lingyu. They will be very careful to hide themselves. But after so many years, Shueiyue Dongtian has become the top force of Fengsuan Lingyu. What about the development of other sects? What will happen to the monks who come from the earth? Is it possible to achieve supremacy? Yi Tian whispered in his heart, and was very upset for his ignorance in the square-inch spiritual realm. If at that time, he had mastered the way to return to the earth from the vast starry sky, then everything in the last life might be changed. Water Moon Cave, we'll come back. It's hard to leave my hometown, but our roots are here. The light of the ancestral star, the wind, the mountain, and the water will always remember my heart. The landscape is changeable. If my heart does not change, we will come back again. Yi Tian continued to watch, and found that the inscriptions on the walls of this Taoist temple were all the feelings and nostalgia of the monks who lived in the Water Moon Cave before they left, and there was not much meaningful content. Although the ancestral star has withered, there is still a big secret. One day, it will break and then stand, or it can be called the Immortal Land. Yi Tian scanned one by one. Finally, his eyes focused on one of them, with an awe-inspiring look. He was no stranger to these words of Chengxiandi. He had heard them from those who came. However, he did not expect that not only those behind the scenes in the Dark Ages would think so, but also the monks who lived on the earth in the past thought that the earth had the possibility of sublimation and transformation into a fairyland. So, on earth, what kind of secret is hidden to bring such a feeling to these people? Unfortunately, these words are too brief for Yi Tian to explore the deeper content. Master, this is the eye of Shueiyue's small cave. While Yi Tian was meditating, the master of Shueiyue sect had already brought him to the deepest part of the Taoist temple. He pointed to a piece of black rock which was almost half human height and covered with many golden patterns in front of him.
Dong Tian stone.
Tian followed the sound to walk past. The vision swept the black rock, the facial expression immediately tiny Lin, Hao Tung Wei. Dong Tian stone, a kind of divine material with spatial properties, is a necessary thing to open up a small world. The size of Dong Tian stone determines the size of a small world. This cave stone of Shuiyuzong, even if it is placed in the square-inch spiritual realm, can be regarded as above average. It's a pity that many of the patterns on the Dong Tian stone have now become dim and lose their luster. The golden pattern sometimes turns on and off, just like a light bulb with poor contact. It turns on and off without any rules. Not only that, there are many black cracks around the cave stone, which are so deep that it seems that people's sight can be swallowed up. These cracks around the Dongshanshi are just the cracks in space. The appearance of this object shows that the originally stable Zhao-Oceanity is now on the verge of collapse. If it is not handled properly, it is extremely easy for Zhao-Oceanity to collapse and turn everything that lives in Zhao-Oceanity into powder. In particular, these spatial fissures also appear around the Dongshanshi, which is the eye of the array. It shows that this situation is more urgent. You know, the most stable place in a small world should be the area where the array eye is located. There are so many fine cracks in the space around the Dongtian stone, which shows that it is not too far away from the time when Shuiwei Zayadanshan was completely destroyed. If I'm not wrong, you Shuiyuzong often have this kind of space crack in some place recently, and then all the creatures in the area where it appears will be devoured, no matter they live or die? Seeing this scene, Tian turned his head and looked at the master of Shuiyuzong. Master, you really have bright eyes. Please help us Shuiyuzong. The leader of Shuiwei sect was both surprised and happy when he heard the speech. He would kneel down to Yi Tianqing with his hands clasped. She is surprised. Yi Tian just see this scene in front of him, can infer the terror crisis of Shuiyuzong now. You know, these crises of Shuiyuzong are treated as the top secret by her, and she gives orders to all Shuiyuzong disciples, forbidding to inform outsiders. Moreover, after these black cracks appear, what happens around them is exactly the same as what Yi Tian said. This kind of situation, just like Yi Tian saw it with her own eyes, how can she not be shocked? But similarly, Yi Tian's extraordinary ability of understanding also made her feel that since Yi Tian was able to know this situation, the probability of having a solution would be very high. I said, I want to help you. Naturally, I won't break my promise. I don't have to keep making big gifts. Seeing this, Yi Tian reaches out his hand and raises the lord of Shuiwei sect from the ground. He shakes his head with a bitter smile and says, Master, can you really solve this problem? The leader of Shuiyuzong was more and more surprised and did not dare to buy the channel. Why don't you believe me? Yi Tian raises eyebrow a smile, looking at her, light way. Don't dare, the leader of Shuiwei clan shook his head in a hurry. She thought that only King Mingzong could have such strength in this world, but she didn't expect that Yi Tian could have it, and she was so sure. That kind of feeling makes people feel like he can do it easily. Deeds speak louder than words. Let's wait and see. Yi Tian looks at the appearance of the suzerain master and knows that there are worries in her heart, so she smiles and waves her hand. Next, he sat cross-legged in front of the Dongshanshi, with his eyes open. He scanned the patterns on the Dongshanshi like a cocoon, and explored the types of runes that opened up a small world. He was no stranger to these things. When he was in the blessed land of Qingming, he found many cave stones for himself, opened up a small world, and raised miraculous drugs in them. In order to find the most suitable medicine for growth and maximize the effectiveness of Zhao-Oceanity, he has already mastered all kinds of rune patterns and secret methods of opening up Zhao-Oceanity. Water Moon Cave Pattern. Just a few. Yi Tian quickly determined that the field pattern engraved on the stone of Shuiyuzong Cave is the unique pattern of Zhao-Oceanity. And this discovery makes him more completely sure that the Shuiwei cave in Fangsuan Lingyu is indeed a small water moon cave originated from the earth. If not, how could they have exactly the same pattern of Zhao-Oceanity? How are you, master? Water Month's own Lord nervous looking at Yi Tian, a heart, at this moment, have been suspended in the throat eyes. We'll see. Yi Tian Lite, immediately, mana operation, source sky eye shine through, familiar urge mana, to the whole stone perfusion, make up for the missing part of the array pattern. In fact, the reason why Shui Yuzong has the symptoms of small heaven and earth instability is very simple. It is because the small heaven and earth pattern engraved on Dongshenshi at the beginning, due to the invasion of time, has become divine and can no longer manipulate Dongshenshi to release the power of space. What Yi Tian is doing now is to find out what is missing and make up for what is missing. It works. It really works. God. Just for a short time, with Yi Tian's action, the cracks around the Dongtian stone suddenly disappeared like the cracked wall, which was smoothed with putty powder, and the frightening phagocytic breath no longer existed. Even with the original, because of these treacherous cracks, leading to the decline of aura in Shui Yuzong, it seems that there are signs of recovery. With the original strong sense of disillusionment, at this moment, they are slowly dissipating and no longer exist. This scene let her heart both ecstatic incomparable, and shock inexplicable. The matter of space cracks, previously let Shui Yuzong burn, let as the leader of Shui Yuzong, she is forced to do something against her heart, but now, in front of Yi Tian, it is easy to be solved by him, just like drinking water and eating. What is powerful? This is the real power. There are still some parts of this small heaven and earth array pattern, which seem to have been dim and incomplete before Shui Yuzong settled down. There may be other areas in Shui Yuzong that have not been discovered by them. At this time, Yi Tian's eyes suddenly changed, and found that after repairing the missing parts of Shui Yuzong, a part of the small heaven and earth array patterns on the Dongtian stone showed a dim color. Moreover, this part of the small heaven and earth array pattern is independent of the small heaven and earth array pattern of Shueiyue sect. Obviously, this means that as long as you activate this small heaven and earth array pattern, you can open up another small heaven and earth in Shueiyue cave. Is there any message left by the ancient monks on earth in this hidden area? Yi Tian's mind is changing. Without any hesitation, he uses his mana to activate the small heaven and earth array pattern on the Dongshenshi. With the installation of his mana, the region gradually begins to have strands of golden patterns. Almost at the moment when the veins spread out, along the void of Shui Yuzong, bursts of violent roar appeared suddenly. That kind of feeling is like the earth dragon turning over, like an unknown area, to pierce the present space and appear in the world. Master Yi, what's the matter? The Water Month's own lord hears this terrible movement, involuntarily looking at Yi Tian, surprised hair asks away. But it's a pity that Yi Tian is pouring all his heart into the small heaven and earth array pattern on the activated cave stone at this moment, and has no time to answer her doubts. My God, what's going on? Is it a mirage? How can I have such a huge space in Shui Yuzong? It's so mysterious. What's the matter with this scene? It's not an illusion, is it? I've lived here for so many years, how can I never realize that there is such an area? When the master of Shueiyue sect was in a state of mind, he suddenly heard the cry of many disciples of Shueiyue sect. There are other spaces in Shui Yuzong? When the lord of Shueiyue sect heard this, he was stunned. He looked at Yi Tian in disbelief, and then rushed to the outside world to see what happened. God, this is... As soon as she walked out of the building, the whole person's expression suddenly dull, as if petrified, looking forward in disbelief. At this moment, in the void on the top of the mountain, there appeared stone steps. Those stone steps are not solid at the moment, but present a semi-virtual and semi-solid state. Many stone steps spread to the top of the sky, level by level, and rushed into the high air, with no end in sight. This area, not only the disciples of Shueiyue sect, but also the leader of Shueiyue sect, has never been aware of it. It's like there is an illusory space coming down from the sky and born out of thin air in Shueiyue sect. But what the master of Shueiyue sect knows is that Yi Tian must have done this strange scene at this moment. No one else can do it except him. However, what puzzled her was how Yi Tian did it. She knew more about everything here than she was the leader of Shueiyue sect. In other words, how Yi Tian did it was a strange move that Shui Yuzong generation had never done. Even at this moment, there was a kind of doubt in her heart. She felt that Yi Tian was like those ancient monks who once lived in the Watermoon cave. At this time, the void shuddered and the ripples scattered. The stone steps, one after another, completely changed from a half-empty and half-solid state to a solid state. In that way, they spread from the top of the mountain and went straight into the deep clouds. Not only that, at the top of the stone steps, there is a strange arch. Above the arch, it is shining, carved with dragons and painted with phoenixes. It seems that the vicissitudes of life are sacred, and it radiates a kind of terrible pressure that makes people's mind collapse.
What is this door? The master of Shueiyue's sect was at a loss.
The oppression made her almost breathless.
She could only look up to the godlike attitude and the huge door. Stargate.
At this time, along her back, came the voice of Yi Tian. Until this moment, she was surprised to find that Yi Tian didn't know when, had quietly appeared beside her, but she didn't even notice. This kind of feeling made her thrilled to the point. Although she was shocked just now, her spiritual sense was still scattered, but Yi Tian was able to get close to her without any sound, making her spiritual sense unable to sense.
This means that if Yi Tian wants to kill her, he can easily do it without any sound. Stargate, what's that? In shock, the Lord of Shueiyue's sect looks at Yi Tian and asks in bewilderment.
Behind this door is the vast starry sky. Yi Tian whispered slowly, word by word. It's just that the leader of Shueiyue's sect is confused. In his eyes, Yi Tian is not only shocked, but also excited. This kind of expression makes her feel confused and unable to understand why the starry sky makes Yi Tian so excited. Suddenly, a bold inference comes into her mind.
Is it true that Yi Tian actually comes from the vast starry sky?
But without waiting for her to continue to ask questions, Yi Tian is walking up the stone steps step by step. A moment later, Yi Tian came to the front of the gate of the starry sky, his eyes swept, and fell on the numerous golden veins. In the huge portal, he was flowing slowly like water, exuding a wonderful atmosphere of interweaving space and space, and his eyes were full of deep admiration. He knew that these veins were mysterious spatial veins, which could only be achieved by great monks who had mastered the way of space. If you had not seen it with your own eyes, who would have thought that as early as in ancient times, those ancient friars had mastered such a powerful force and embarked on the road of exploring the starry sky? That kind of mysterious, let him can't help but put out his hand toward the huge door on the touch. At the moment when the finger fell on the door, along the huge door, there was a low hum immediately, such as excited. Then, along the original foggy, cannot see clearly inside the door, suddenly there is a bright starry sky.
Even Yi Tian, looking at this scene, couldn't help but gasp.
This scene is too magical, behind the mountains and water, but in front of the body is a boundless starry sky. The stars are shining and incomparable, like a beautiful picture. Those stars are just within reach. When the rivers of stars flow in them, they drop the power of stars. They are peaceful and holy, as if through endless time. Yi Tian looks at the stars in front of him, hesitating and bewildered. He is very curious whether the star sky behind the door is the square-inch spiritual realm. After a little hesitation, Yi Tian raises his hand and slowly pours mana into the gate of the starry sky. He wants to see if the gate can still be urged. In a flash, the gate of the starry sky trembles. The clear starry sky in the gate suddenly spins up and turns into a huge whirlpool like a black hole.
What on earth is this? Why do I think there is a huge space behind this vortex? All the disciples of Shuiyuzong were shocked. They looked at the huge door and felt a kind of space from behind the vortex. But at this time, the whirlpool suddenly broke, turned into a beautiful starry sky again, and finally, returned to the dim.
Wheezing. Not only that, at this moment, Yi Tian is like a dehydrated fish, gasping, with an unhealthy pallor on his face and a cold sweat on his forehead.
My mana is too weak to support myself.
I can't open the gate of the starry sky and the path of the stars. Yi Tian sighed in his heart that the consumption of mana in this starry gate was too terrible. Just for a moment, he felt that just as this gate had emptied all the mana in his body, he had a feeling of incomparable weakness. According to his estimation, if you want to push the door of the starry sky, I'm afraid you need at least the strength of Huaying's success. Or, another way is to fill it with Lingyu, and fill it with a large number of Lingyu.
But the number of Lingyu you need is in millions. But there is no doubt that such a number of Lingyu, he cannot have now. The sky is close, but it can't reach it.
Yi Tian sighs gently, and finally takes his hand back from the gate of the starry sky. His eyes are lost, but not too much. He knows that he is still in the world of mortals, and now is not the time to get away from the earth and set foot on the star road again.
The gate of the starry sky must be hidden again, can't let those who come to discover. Immediately after that, Tian made a decision in his heart to relock the small sky array pattern and hide the gate of the starry sky into the empty sky. The gate of the starry sky is very likely to be a gateway connecting the square-inch spiritual realm, and through this gate of the starry sky, there may be no suppression of cultivation. Once discovered by those who come, I'm afraid they will do whatever it takes to get through the connection between the stargate and the square-inch spiritual realm. The comers are extremely cruel, and their means are fierce. What they do is to occupy the earth, which is suspected to be an immortal. If they appear on the earth with the cultivation of their heyday, there is no doubt that it will be a terrible disaster. All ordinary people, I am afraid, will become slaves of those powerful monks for them to drive. At that time, the fire of war and disaster may occupy the whole world. After confirmation, Tian leaves the gate of the starry sky and walks slowly down the stone steps. But at this moment, all the disciples of Shueiyue's sect look at Tian as if they were looking at the gods. At that moment, Tian stretched out his hand and touched the gate of the starry sky. The picture of large and gorgeous starry sky appearing in front of him was so shocking that they felt that Tian was like a god controlling a starry sky. The gods, no doubt, need to be revered. I hope no one will know about everything that happened here today. Tian turns his head and looks at the Lord of Shuiyuzong. Don't worry, Master Yi. This will be the biggest secret of Shueiyue's sect. No matter who is a disciple, he won't reveal a word. On hearing this, the leader of Shueiyue's sect nodded his head without thinking. At this moment, Qianma said that Tian just asked her to keep a secret. Even if she was allowed to make her own decision, she would not dare to question half a word and would respectfully fulfill it. That's good. Tian nodded slightly, then turned around and walked to the cave stone. He hid the gate of the starry sky with the little mana he had just accumulated. With the huge hum, the gate of the starry sky and the stone steps, which originally stood in the void, were suddenly dim. In a moment, they were lonely and no longer existed. It looked as if they had never appeared before. This mysterious scene made the disciples of Shuiyuzong marvel one by one. Such a huge space suddenly appear, and then disappear, if not see, who dares to believe it is true? What's the difference between people who can do all this and gods? Master Yi, our Shuiyuzong has a place full of spiritual energy, which is very beneficial to cultivation. You can have a rest there, Master. The master of Shueiyue's sect looked at the void. After a moment of stupefaction, he looked at Tian and said respectfully. She felt that Tian's breath was weak at this moment, and her face was pale. She looked like she needed to rest. Good. Tian nods. The gate of the starry sky has lost too much mana. The mana in his elixir field has been almost emptied. In addition to the small heaven and earth array pattern, which has just closed the gate of the starry sky, he really feels tired at this moment and needs to rest. Qingqing, take Master Yi to have a rest. Shueiyue said respectfully, then turned his head and looked at Su Qing. Yes. Su Qing nodded respectfully. After looking at Tian with complicated eyes, he took him to the valley in the distance. The surrounding disciples, looking at the scene in front of them, all looked at Su Qing with envy, and looked at Tian with even more admiration. On this day, Tian's performance is too shocking. Whether it's a sudden appearance in Shuiyuzong like a god of heaven, blocking Su Qing's marriage, breaking through Shuiyuijian array with one sword, killing Ji Changming with another sword, or later opening the gate of the starry sky, all of these give people a sense of extreme power. And this kind of power has conquered all the female disciples of Shuiyuzong. Su Qing looked at those eyes, 5 flavors mixed in his heart. She knew that these disciples of Shueiyue's sect misunderstood the relationship between themselves and Tian. They thought that Tian came from afar because he liked her. For her sake, they were so angry that they wiped out the Shueiyue sword array with one sword, and they did not hesitate to stand on the opposite side of Qingming's sect and cut Ji Changming with one sword. But only her own clear, Tian heart to her, there is no so-called feelings, I'm afraid, just there is a pity. As Su Qing's mind changes, he brings Tian to a quiet room in the valley. The aura here is really good. Tian feels it quietly and finds that in this valley of Shuiyuzong, aura is really abundant, and it also has a kind of vitality.
It can almost be compared with his rented house in Nanhai. It's a good place for cultivation on the earth with weak aura, and this scene makes Tian's heart move slightly, and he suddenly thinks whether the decline of aura on earth is related to the ancestral star split as the monks say.
Is it true that the earth that used to be is not what it is now? The earth that is now is just a remnant after being ruined? Well, you can go back. You don't need to worry about the marriage in the future. I will solve the problem of Kingning Zone. Now that you have chosen to go on the road of cultivation, practice well. Only when you are strong, you will not succumb to others. Next, Tian turns his head and looks at Su Cheng.
Now he has no love or hate for Su Cheng. The only thing he has left in his heart is the feeling and pity he had under the same roof. After all, no matter Su Cheng or he, they are all victims of Taemin.
Thank you for Taemin.
Su Cheng nodded, followed closely, looking at Tian Dao with complicated eyes. In fact, she also knows that the culprit of those disputes between her and Tian is actually Taemin. If it wasn't for Taemin's coercion, her father would not have done those things that I'm sorry for Tian.
I'm taking revenge for myself. Tian shook his head and said. Whatever you did, it helped me. Thank you.
Su Cheng shook his head, slowly, followed by, she said with a bitter smile, it seems that I have said thank you many times, but I don't know how to repay you. I also said that you don't need to thank me, let alone repay me.
Tian light way.
After a little silence, Su Cheng turns around and walks to a corner of the quiet room.
After a long hesitation, she lights a thread.
Soon, a sweet smell spread in the quiet room.
Well, go back. I'll adjust my breath. Tian looked at Su Cheng and said slowly.
But almost at the moment of speaking, he suddenly felt that, just after the sweet aroma was inhaled into his nose, the flow rate of blood along his body suddenly accelerated a bit, and his breathing became a little hot, and a strange desire suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. There is no doubt that there are drugs to stimulate people's desire in this fragrance.
This is Huaqingxiang. Tian frowned and immediately held his breath.
After looking at the thread incense, he looked at Su Cheng and said in a deep voice.
It was given to me by the master. She knew I didn't like Ji Changming and resisted him, so she gave me this. She said that when I ignited this one day, my mind would be lost and I would feel that everything was not so painful. There was a way to escape. Su Cheng looked at Tian with complicated eyes, slowly, and immediately said, I don't want to owe you anything, but I have nothing to thank you except this body. As the words fall, Su Cheng raises his hand and takes off his clothes. His black underwear sets off his snow-white skin, especially his large plump body, thin waist and legs. It's a stretch of blood. The cool air and shyness make Su Cheng get goosebumps all over her body. Moreover, she can't help but want to cover her chest with her hands. But as soon as her hand is raised, she extends her hand back to untie the button and show all the beauty in front of Tian. Sweet fragrance, lingering in the room, white skin shining, simple stone room, at this moment, it is a kind of strange delicate. Tian.
Su Cheng endured the shyness in his heart. His voice was trembling.
He looked at Tian and murmured.
At this moment, she suddenly realized that, in fact, she didn't resist to commit herself to Tian. To be exact, it even seemed to be a kind of desire in her heart, and this feeling was not just because of Huaqingxiang.
What are you going to do?
When Tian heard the sound, he raised his hand and put out the fragrance. At the same time, he looked at Su Cheng and said in a deep voice.
I think you need me quickly.
Su Cheng's eyes are blurred. She looks at Tian and murmurs. At this moment, she feels that the smell of men and masculinity on Tian is so attractive that he can't hide his inner desire and has an abnormal longing. At the same time, her feet like stepping on the cloud, fluttering to Tian, want Tian to crush his body in his arms.
Do you think that's what I saved you for?
But almost as she approached, an incredible scene appeared. Tian suddenly raised his hand and pointed it at Su Cheng's shoulder blade. In a flash, a strange sense of bitterness suddenly swept through Su Cheng's whole body, making her feel that her whole body became rigid and petrified at this moment.
No matter how hard she tried to move, she couldn't move forward. I have no interest in these things.
As I said,
I don't need any reward, let alone these. And at this time, Yi Tian continued to light mouth, voice abnormal indifference. Not only that, but also Su Qing saw that almost at the same time when Yi Tian opened his mouth, he breathed out 2 pink breath along his nose. These are the medicinal power of Huaqingxiang. When the pink breath fell to the ground, Yi Tian's eyes became clear and indifferent from the beginning. As he said, when he rescued Su Qing, he just thought about the time when he was under the same roof. When he did this, he never thought of asking Su Qing to give him any so-called reward, not to mention that he paid back the favor with his body. If he does, who is he? Take advantage of the danger? What's more, if he did, would he be worthy of Ningyao and Qin Luo God? Su Qing's body looks really attractive, but it's a pity that Yi Tian is not a beast who can only think with his lower body. What he wants is to give everything to the people he cares about and likes. IU. When Yi Tian's words fall, Su Qing's confused mind is suddenly knocked down into the abyss. Although she is still breathing hot, her snow-white skin is still pale pink, and her longing is still lingering in her heart, the shame that hurts her self-esteem is still irresistible. She really didn't expect that Yi Tian would refuse herself, especially when she ignited Huaqingxiang. What does this show? It shows that Yi Tian really has no affection for her as he said before. At this moment, she felt a sense of extreme bending, and even felt that her throat was fishy and salty, as if she was going to vomit blood. In other words, it's not holding back, but a loss that can't be covered up. Shua. At this time, Yi Tian raises his hand again and points it on Su Qing. A magic power generated by breathing out aura sweeps all over Su Qing's body. Suddenly, all the properties of Huaqingxiang are forced out of Su Qing's body. It turns into a light pink fog, flying out of the pores and falling on the ground. The medicine power is dispersed, Su Qing's eyes become clear, and his face is full of shame. You go. I'll take it as if it didn't happen. Yi Tian Lide, immediately hand a move, will Su Qing take off the clothes on the ground, put on her body, turned his head, deep voice way. Su Qing stares at Yi Tian with red eyes. After a long silence, he puts on clothes one by one. However, along the corner of her eyes, there are clear tears. I'm sorry. Finally, she whispers to Yi Tian, and then tears fall from the corner of her eyes and stumbles out of the cave. Su Qing, the past and the past have been cut off between you and me. I don't need you to be grateful to me, and I don't care whether you hate me or not. From now on, you only need to practice well, and you don't need to pay attention to other things. If you want to find me for revenge, I will wait for you at any time, but I will forgive you twice. Yi Tian looks at Su Qing's back and thinks it's necessary for him to make his words clear. You help me get rid of Ji Changming. It's a life-saving favor. We are clear. Don't worry. From now on, I won't pester you, and I won't appear in front of you again. You and I, take care of each other. Hearing the sound, Su Qing stopped. After a long silence, he raised his hand and wiped away the tears from his eyes. She has thought clearly that the tragedies that happened to Yi Tian and her in the past are all the work of Taiyiman. Now Taiyiman has been destroyed, and there is no creditor for this hatred. As for Yi Tian's killing her father, although she can't let it go, she also understands that her father indirectly killed Yi Tian's parents. No matter who killed her father or killed her mother, it's impossible to turn a deaf ear to her. It's not too much to say that her father's behavior is worthy of death. As for what Yi Tian has done to her, she has really done her utmost. She asks herself, if it's her, I really don't know if she can come forward to help Yi Tian eliminate the disaster if Yi Tian is in danger. Needless to say, Yi Tian did all this without asking her to give any reward. Even if she was in love with her, she was indifferent to it. This shows that Yi Tian is absolutely one of the few gentlemen in the world. Under such circumstances, what does she take to continue to hate Yi Tian? Only by leaving behind the past grudges can it be regarded as a real relief for her. From now on, she will devote all her efforts to cultivation and strive to make herself strong enough to be able to see Yi Tian's back in the future without Yi Tian's help. Just watching in silence is enough for her. Take care. When Yi Tian heard the speech, he nodded slightly, and immediately bent his knees to meditate. He breathed out his aura and began to practice. He felt that what Su Qing said should be true. At this moment, the past had finally come to an end. The so-called one other too wide may be what it is now.
Su Cheng nodded, and then step by step toward the cave outside, but along the corner of the eye, tears are like broken line, constantly flowing down. The tears do not know is to give up hatred, because Yi Tian refused, or because from now on, she and Yi Tian no longer have any connection. Time passed quickly, and the time of the night passed quickly. After a night's cultivation, all the mana lost in Yi's celestial body has been replenished, and man has regained his former strength. Master Yi, this is the Water Moon Sword Array of our Water Moon sect. Please accept it. If there is any need in the future, you can say that as long as our Water Moon sect can do it, we will try our best to satisfy you. As soon as the day broke, Shui Wei came to the cave and put a roll of jade slips respectfully in front of and behind Yi Tian's face. Shui Yuzong should have ground fire. I'm going to make pills here. Yi Tian takes over the Shui Wei sword array and makes sure that the master of Shui Wei sect doesn't fool himself or hide his secrets in the array. Then he nods his head and looks at her and says slowly. The opening of the Stargate yesterday brought about a huge consumption, but it also made his cultivation state change like breaking and then standing. He was completely stable on the 6th floor of the cave, reached the level of great fullness, and reached the threshold of breaking through the 7th floor of the cave. Therefore, he wants to start refining Che Yuan Dan, lead cultivation, and further. Master Yi, can you still refine pills? The Lord of Shuiwei sect hears the words and looks at Yi Tian in disbelief. He is very surprised. Although she knew that Yi Tian was extremely powerful, she did not expect that Yi Tian had the ability to refine pills. You know, alchemy is much more difficult than cultivation. It takes a lot of effort to control the ratio of all kinds of elixirs and the fire of the earth. Even in a big mountain gate like Shuiyuzong, there are only 2 or 3 alchemy masters, and they are all used as treasures in the sect. Yi Tian is so young that his cultivation is already so powerful. If he can refine pills, the master of Shuiyu's sect can't understand how such a person can practice and achieve such omnipotence. In today's world, refining pills, if I say the second, no one dares to say the first. If you can provide me with enough reward, I can also consider helping you Shuiyuzong refine Tianlingdan. The Leaf Day hears speech, confident full of smile, then looking at Water Month's own lord, Light Wei. Tianlingdan. When Yi Tian's words fell, the master of Shuiyu's sect's breath became urgent and his eyes became blazing. Tianlingdan is absolutely the scarcest pill in the mountain people's world. Unfortunately, in today's world, except Qingming sect, there are few other mountain sects that can refine Tianlingdan. At least, the Dancer of Shuiyu's sect can't do it at all. However, there is no doubt that there are several prefectural peaks in Shuiyu's sect. They are waiting for her to help them find Tianling pill so as to break through the heaven level. Unfortunately, the conditions for Qingmingzong to help refine the elixir are extremely harsh. Even for a large family like Shuiyuzong, the price should be considered again and again. This time, she married Su Cheng and Ji Changming. In addition to stabilizing Shuiyuzong's small world, another idea was to get close to Qingmingzong, to see if Qingmingzong could help Shuiyuzong refine a few Tianlingdan at a lower price, so that they could have more people on the mountain. If we say that the prefecture-level mountain people are the mainstay of a clan, then the heaven-level mountain people are the sea god needles of a clan. The more the number of people on Tianji Mountain, not only can make a clan more powerful, but also can make a clan last longer. But there is no doubt that when Yi Tian killed Ji Changming and Shuiyuzong, she knew that it was unrealistic to ask Qingmingzong to help refine Tianlingdan. But she never thought that when she felt desperate, Yi Tian gave her a hope. She is not without doubt Yi Tian's words, can think of Yi Tian yesterday's performance, her heart did not dare to question. Moreover, she feels that Yi Tian is not the kind of person who likes to joke. When she says it, she will do it. Just as he told Yunfei at the beginning that if someone dares to make an idea because of Su Qing's constitution, he will let the other party pay the price of bleeding. After Ji Changming, the elder of Qingming sect, stares at Su Qing, and he cuts it with one sword. Since he says that he can refine Tianlingdan, he can certainly refine it. I don't know what kind of reward we have to pay to let you help us refine the elixir, Master Yi. Thinking of this, the Lord of Shuiyuzong eagerly looks at Yi Tian and says in an urgent voice. Don't worry about this. I'll talk about it after you're sure that I have the ability to refine Tian Lingden. The leaf day hears a sound, looking at Water Month's own lord to smile lightly to shake head, light way. He always does things like this. He doesn't play with those empty-headed things. If he can do it, he can do it. If he can't do it, he can't do it. Moreover, he should let others know that he can do it, and then put forward conditions. Well, I do have Dewa grottos in Shuiyuzon. Please come here, master. The lord of Shuiyue sect hears the words, looks at Yi Tian with admiration, and then turns to his side respectfully. She knows that with Yi Tian's strength, no matter what he wants from Shuiyuzon, he can get it with his hand. But Yi Tian didn't bully the weak because of their weakness. Instead, he chose to make a fair deal with them. This kind of heart is really commendable. At least, just from this point of view, Yi Tian is thousands of times stronger than King Mingzong. However, what puzzled her was that although she could not perceive the specific realm from Yi Tian's body, she knew that Yi Tian's strength had definitely surpassed the level of heaven. In this way, Tian Lingden had no effect on Yi Tian. She really can't understand what elixir Yi Tian wants to make. She can't say that what he wants to make is more powerful than the most powerful elixir in the world? Yi Tian naturally would not explain so much to the lord of Shuiyue sect. After hearing the words, he followed her to the underground fire cave. Master Yi is going to refine pills. At this time, the news that Yi Tian was going to enter Dewa cave to refine pills had spread all over Shuiyuzon. All Shuiyuzon followed them spontaneously. They wanted to see the difference between Yi Tian's pills and their pills, and whether there would be any anomalies like yesterday. A moment later, Yi Tian took out the Dan stove from the storage ring, and after preheating on the ground fire, he began to refine Che Yuan Dan step by step. Iwei Lingyao, with dazzling speed, is being processed in Yi Tian's hands, and then it is thrown into the Dan stove. After the fire turned a little, there was a clanging sound. Hum. A moment later, a pale blue elixir suddenly flew out of the furnace and hovered in the void. Strands of pale blue halo, like the ripples of running water and the waves of fog, swept in all directions, making every part of Shuiyuzong filled with an amazing fragrance. Even with the god, what kind of elixir is this, on the ground around the cave, how do I feel? Just smell the elixir, I feel like I want to fly even if it's Tian Lingden. It doesn't have such amazing fragrance, does it? I feel that my cultivation realm is about to break through. The strong fragrance of the medicine is extremely intoxicating. That kind of medicine is intoxicating. Even after smelling a few mouthfuls of the fragrance of the medicine, a few young disciples of Shuiyuzong were stunned to find that their realm fluctuated. Their cultivation realm went up a small step and broke through the mysterious level. Look, the plants around the grottos seem to have changed. Next, another disciple of Shuiyuzong pointed to the door of Dihua cave and exclaimed. As soon as they went along, they saw that some plants that had been withered and shriveled because of the fire of the earth were growing around the cave. At this moment, they turned green, as if they had regained their vitality. There is no doubt that their changes must also be caused by the vision of Dan Chang and the fragrance of medicine. Just the leaking Danshan made people's cultivation improve to a small level, and let the withered plants glow in the new year. This situation almost made those Shuiyuzong disciples in the hall crazy. No matter which one of them had ever seen such an incredible situation. And in this case, it is even more imaginable that Yi Tian's pills are so powerful that they are beyond imagination. Similarly, it is necessary to use such a powerful elixir in order to leap up the realm of cultivation. How amazing should it be? I'm afraid that this realm is definitely more than the innate realm, the limit that people on the mountain think today. Master Yi didn't lie. He can really refine the elixir. Not only the disciples of Shuiyue sect, but also the master of Shuiyue sect saw these visions. This scene shocked her, and at the same time, she was filled with ecstasy. As long as you're not a fool, you can see that the quality of the pills Yi Tian made at this moment is definitely better than that of Tianling pills several times or even 100 times. And even Yi Tian can refine this kind of elixir. Isn't it easier to refine the elixir? Not only that, but she also confirmed one thing, that is, as Yi Tian said, if he thinks he is the second, there is absolutely no one in the world who dares to claim to be the first. It's just a Che Yuan pill that makes these people look like this.
If I refine the Bihai Chaoxing pill that breaks through the sea view, or the Lianqing pill of a higher level, then these people will drop their chin on the ground. Yi Tian listens to the sound of shock around him, with a smile on his lips. However, he also understood that although the mountain people were really powerful and mysterious compared with ordinary people, in fact, in the eyes of monks, there was no difference between the mountain people of Shuiyuzong and ordinary people. Take Tianlingdan, the highest quality pill among the mountain people, as an example. For the mountain people, Tianlingdan is a kind of pill that can be met but not sought. However, no matter how strong Tianlingdan is, it can only affect the mountain people's body after taking it. After successful refining, there will be no clouds and other anomalies, let alone the leaking fragrance, which can make the mountain feel better. Master breakthrough, let withered plants return to life. Therefore, the performance of these people at the moment is no different from that of ordinary people when they witness the strength of mountain people. With this Dan, I can break through the 7 floors of the cave. When the realm is stable, King Ningzong can also take a walk. Immediately, Yi Tian whispered in his heart, raised Che Yuan Dan and swallowed it. Dan medicine entrance, in a flash, a pure incomparable drug power, like a line of fire, along his throat, rushed into the Dan field. Hum. In a flash, the magic power in his elixir field, like burning grease, was thrown into it. It soared like a fire, like a surging river, sweeping all over his body along the meridians. Not only that, his original spirit fire is becoming more and more concise, constantly swaying, emitting immeasurable light, immeasurable heat and immeasurable power. What is the realm of Master Yi? The breath he exudes is so powerful and frightening. I feel that my soul seems to be destroyed. I can't believe this kind of strength. I suddenly feel that Master Yi's practice is called cultivation. The so-called cultivation of us is nothing more than making small trouble. Under the sway of the original spirit fire, the power of Shui's 6 disciples, who were originally standing at the entrance of the underground fire cave, felt that their body and soul seemed to be destroyed. The terrible pressure made them retreat for more than 10 meters before they felt that they had the ability to breathe. The 7th floor of the cave is finished. After a long time, Yi Tian suddenly got up from the ground, flew out 2 golden lights along his eyes, shot down the stone layer of Dihua grottos, and suddenly penetrated the grottos and cracked large pieces of stone fragments. This terrible scene made all the disciples of Shuiyuzong breathe coldly, and their eyes were full of tremor and fear. Yi Tian is so powerful that they feel that if Yi Tian wants to kill them, he doesn't need any effort at all. He can turn them into flying dust just by raising his hand and twisting them gently. Compared with the change of the 6th floor of the cave, the 7th floor of the cave is not a big change. It's just a leap in strength. At the same time, Yi Tian began to look inside the dantian and examined the original spirit fire. He found that it didn't change as inconceivably as it did when it was on the 6th floor of the cave. It was just that when the golden flame was around, the red haze, which had the ability to transform the body and was as bright as a ruby, became a little stronger. All this confirmed his previous conjecture that the 6th floor of the cave was a watershed of Sui Wangguan's idea. Otherwise, the change of the 7th floor would not be just like this. However, this breakthrough, although no earth-shaking changes have taken place, the improvement of that power and the increase of Cabernet Sauvignon still cannot be underestimated. You know, the more concise and powerful the Cabernet Sauvignon is, the more powerful the transformation of the human body will be. Yi Tian has been practicing Taoism and Fengsuan Lingyu for 200 years. He has never seen any kind of dharma that can continuously improve his body. Even Yi Tian was a little curious. If Sui Wangguan's idea was allowed to continue to transform, what level would his body reach? Will it be possible to achieve the legendary God King body or immortal King body? But there is no doubt that under this kind of transformation, the speed of his cultivation in this life will be far faster than that in the previous life. After confirming the change, Yi Tian converges and looks out to the underground fire cave. Congratulations, Master Yi, you have made a breakthrough in your cultivation, and you are on a higher level. The leader of Shuiyuzong felt the pressure relaxed, which was like an amnesty. He quickly clasped his hands and looked at Yi Tian, and said with a respectful smile, "Congratulations on Master Yi's breakthrough in cultivation." He has been living with heaven for a long time. On hearing this, a group of Shuiyuzong disciples quickly clasped their fists and saluted Yi Tian in unison. No need to. Yi Tian waved his hand to show that there was no need for such a big ceremony. Then he looked at the Lord of Shueiyue's sect and said with a smile, "How about now that I can be sure that I have the ability to refine the elixir?" "Master, if you refine the elixir, it will be like killing a chicken with an ox's knife and catching it with your hands." The leader of Shueiyue's sect smiles bitterly and looks at Yi Tian with admiration. Although she had no doubt about Yi Tian before, she was still a little uneasy. After all, refining pills is different from practicing. It doesn't mean that the higher you practice, the stronger your ability to refine pills. But just when she saw Yi Tian refining pills, she found that Yi Tian's ability of refining pills is stronger than the realm of cultivation. This made her very confused. You know, Yi Tian's age is only in his 20s. At this age, even if he began to practice from his mother's womb, I'm afraid there's no way to have such a high level of cultivation as well as such a high level of Dan Dao attainments. Since you believe it, it's easy. As I said before, as long as you Shui Yuzong can take out what I need, I can refine the elixir for you. With a faint smile, Yi Tian interrupted the meditation of the suzerain master and said with a smile, "I don't know what you want, sir. Just mention it. I will do my best." Without thinking, the leader of Shueiyue's sect said in a deep voice. The disciples behind her, who had been at the top of the prefecture level for many years, were short of breath and glowing in their eyes. Look at that appearance. I'm afraid as long as Yi Tian takes out the elixir for them, they will not refuse to let them go through fire and water. It's very simple. I need a panacea, Kongming cicada. It's the same size as the cicada, but it's light green. It looks like it's carved from beautiful jade. Yi Tian chuckles and says his needs. After breaking through the 7th floor of the cave, he needs to prepare for himself to break through the 8th floor of the cave. Now, as long as he has the empty cicada, he can get together to break through the 8 layers of Nirvana Dan in the cave. Empty cicada? Hearing the news, the leader of Shueiyue's sect showed his lost face involuntarily. Although she had seen many miraculous drugs, she had never heard of this peculiar cicada. Not only him, but also many Shuiyuzong disciples were puzzled and curious about what kind of medicine it was. Isn't there a message from the empty cicada, or the empty cicada? Even in a clan like Shuiyuzong, Yi Tian looks at this scene with a look of awe-inspiring. You know, Shuiyuzong is powerful in the mountain. If they don't know the cicada, it's really hard to find it. Master, does that cicada still have a strange power? When it calls, although it's sharp, it makes people feel drowsy? But just at this time, along the last side of the crowd, the disciple of Shuiyuzong, who had just broken through from the top of yellow level to the top of Shin level because of breathing Danxiang, blushed and trembled to ask Yi Tian. Sleepy? The leaf day hears a sound, on the face suddenly peeps out a touch of happy color. In addition to the body shape, the other characteristic between the empty cicada and the common cicada is that the idle cicada disturbs sleep, but its call can hypnotize people. To be exact, its call is a kind of mind attack. As long as your mind is not as strong as it, it will be controlled and drowsy. That's right. Does Kongming cicada really have this characteristic? Do you have it in your hand? Can I exchange a pill for you? Without thinking, Yi Tian looks at the disciple of Shuiyuzong and nods. He asks in a deep voice. Boom! After a word, the surrounding Shuiyuzong disciples immediately became boiling. Many of them took a cold breath and looked at the Shuiyuzong disciple with envy. Tian Lington is very rare and precious. I don't know how many people can't get it after several years or even decades. But now, because of a cicada, they can get such a precious thing. If it's spread, I don't know how many mountain people they will envy. I'm sorry, sir. I don't have a cicada. I just saw the cicada you said when I was a child playing in the mountains around the welfare home in Annan town. After hearing its sound, I felt very sleepy, and then fell asleep. At this time, the disciple of Shuiyuzong shook his head, then looked at Yi Tian and said, and soon after that, I was brought to Shuiyuzong by the master. I don't know if there are any empty cicadas in that forest. There will be. When Yi Tian heard that there was no empty cicada in his hand, he was disappointed. But immediately, he said solemnly, Kongming cicada is an extremely nostalgic creature. It is easy to leave the place where it is used to.
Under such circumstances, the Kongming cicada mentioned by the Shueiyue sect disciple has a great probability that it is still in the woods around the welfare home in Annan town.
Of course, if it's not captured by other mountain people. The message you gave me is very useful. I'll keep my word. I'll give you Shui Yuzong a Tianlingden, and I'll give you another Tianlingden alone. Next, Yi Tian looks at the disciple of Shui Yuzong and says with a smile. Ah!
The disciple of Shui Yuzong was stunned when he heard this. He looked up at Yi Tian and opened his mouth, but could not say a word. She really didn't expect that she just provided a definite message, and Yi Tian was willing to use Tianlingden as a reward.
It's so big that it's incredible.
Not only her, but also the disciples of Shui Yuzong around her were all dumbfounded, and everyone's head was buzzing.
This scene was also unexpected to them. Moreover, Yi Tian's casual and incomparable words gave them a kind of feeling.
It seemed that for these mountain people, the precious and incomparable elixir was just like the most common radish and cabbage in Yi Tian's eyes.
Why, don't you like it? Yi Tian looks at the shocked appearance of the disciple of Shui Yuzong. He raises his eyebrows and smiles, joking. I dare not.
Hearing this, the disciple of Shueiyue sect shook her head in a hurry. Then she moved her lips and raised her head. As if she had enough courage, she said, however, if you really want to thank me, you don't need a heaven elixir, just a earth elixir.
Give you a heaven elixir, you can exchange for more earth elixirs?
Yi Tian didn't expect that she would make this decision. After picking her eyebrows, she looked at her and asked with a smile. The elixir is really precious, but my younger generation I'm afraid I can't keep such a good fortune, so it's better to have a Delingden. The disciple of Shui Yuzong hesitated for a moment, bit his lower lip, and his voice trembled with tension.
You're smart.
Yi Tian hears the sound and looks at the disciple of Shui Yuzong, nodding approvingly. As the saying goes, every man is innocent and has his own sin. The elixir of heaven is really precious, but such a precious thing can't be kept by the cultivation of this disciple of Shueiyue sect.
Even if she is in Shueiyue sect, the leader of Shueiyue sect will treat them well.
But even so, after Yi Tian leaves, the leader of Shueiyue sect will surely take Tianlingden from her and give it to those who need it more.
I'm afraid there won't be much compensation for her.
Therefore, as far as she is concerned, it is far better to get an earth elixir that will make the best use of everything in the near future than an unstoppable heaven elixir.
The elder praised it.
The disciple of Shui Yuzong blushed and said in a trembling voice.
No, I don't think so. You're really smart. Yi Tian shook his head and continued with a smile.
What this disciple of Shueiyue sect did really sounds very simple.
It seems that everyone can do it.
But in fact, there are many people in the world who can see through a thing, but after seeing through, there are few people who can understand the choice.
This is the elixir you want.
Immediately after that, Yi Tian threw his refined elixir to the disciple of Shueiyue sect. After receiving the elixir and thanking him with joy, he said, if your future cultivation can break through to the peak of the prefecture level, you can come to me. I'll send you another elixir to ensure that you enter the heaven level.
Thank you, master.
The disciple of Shui Yuzong catches the elixir and gives a respectful salute to Yi Tian. She knew that the promise given by Yi Tian was not only an elixir, but also a possibility for her life. Whether it's the leader of Shueiyue sect or the elders of Shueiyue sect, when they allocate resources to the disciples of Shueiyue sect in the future, they have to think of what Yi Tian said. They know that as long as she promotes her accomplishments to the top of the prefecture level, it's basically equivalent to Shueiyue sect having a heaven-level old monster. In this case, they will choose to tilt their resources towards her. For a mountain person with ordinary aptitude like her, it must be a fluke that her accomplishments can break through the prefecture level later period under normal circumstances. But now, she has the hope to break through the sky level. Such a move, it can be said that Yi Tian has directly changed her future destiny.
I mean what I say.
Since I got the news of Kongming cicada in Shui Yuzong, I'll make a magic pill for you. Immediately, Yi Tian looked at the Lord of Shueiyue Zone, stretched out his hand and said faintly.
Wait a moment, master. The leader of Shueiyue sect was overjoyed and immediately brought the elixir to Yi Tian.
It's easy for Yi Tian to make this kind of 3-grade pill, Yuan pill, and it's easy to capture it, not to mention it's just a heavenly elixir.
A moment later, a heavenly elixir came out of the oven.
In everyone's eyes, it was thrown by Yi Tian to the leader of Shuiyue's sect. After all, Yi Tian inquired about the news of Annam town to the disciple of Shuiyuzong. Then he opened the field and left Shuiyuzong. When they left, all the disciples of Shuiyue's sect were respectful and gave each other gifts, including the leader of Shuiyue's sect.
Su Qing is also in the crowd, looking at Yi Tian's back.
His eyes are long and complex to the extreme. She has no hatred for Yi Tian, but the love and admiration in her heart is more difficult to cut than hatred. But she also fully understands that her love, but also in vain, destined to flower intentionally, merciless.
Su Qing, when Master Yi left, why didn't you say a few words to her?
Seeing Su Qing's appearance, Xiao Cheng blinked and asked curiously.
Qing.
Cloud Fei hears a sound, frown saw small green one eye, sink a voice way. She also found the abnormality between Yi Tian and Su Qing, but this abnormality made her realize that I'm afraid everyone misjudged the feelings between Yi Tian and Su Qing. Maybe Yi Tian didn't come to save the beauty for the sake of the hero, but just came with a wish that she didn't want to see an innocent person suffer a lot.
Now, Xiao Qing asks Su Qing, isn't this sprinkling salt on her wound?
There is no relationship between Yi Tian and me, only gratitude. But at this time, Yinfei suddenly saw that Su Qing was looking at Xiao Qing and shaking his head with a smile. Between Su Qing and Yi Tian, they are completely relieved. Cloud Fei hears this words, in the heart move, immediately realized that state of Su Qing and Yi Tian now. For the rest of my life, I will not fight for the day and night. At this time, I wish you happiness and peace. Su Qing looks at Cloud Fei to smile lightly, immediately, looking at the back figure that Leaf Day leaves, in the heart Lo Nan. She may not be able to walk into Yi Tian's heart, but she hopes that in the future, like today, she can follow his steps, look at his back from a distance, and see that he is happy and safe, as long as that is enough. Don't go back to Nanhai first, go to Annam town and collect the empty cicada. After leaving Shuiyue cave, Yi Tian immediately decided to go to Annam town. Kongming's cicada is directly related to whether he can break through the 8th floor of the cave in the future. Now he has found some clues. Naturally, he can't delay a little time. He should go to Annam town as soon as possible to collect it. Otherwise, once he is taken first, all his previous efforts will be soaked in soup. After calling Qin Luotian and reporting their safety, Yi Tian made a reservation and went straight to Qianxi.
Annan town is located in the border of Guizhou province, which is a typical remote town with serious population loss.
When Yi Tian arrived at the town, he found that the town was lifeless. In the streets, except for some ragged old people and children, he could hardly see young people. Yi Tian went around the town, looking for someone to ask about the location of the welfare home, but he found that the old people and children here speak a dialect with a strong accent, and he could not understand what they said. He didn't even know what they meant. The smell of this small town is so strange. Not only that, he also found that in this small town, whether the elderly or the children, there is a faint yin qi in their bodies. Although it is very weak, it has a great impact on human health. This can be seen from the fact that no matter the old people or the children he saw in the small town, their bodies are obviously lean. Although he doesn't know what's going on, Yi Tian doesn't allow this kind of yin qi harming people to happen under his nose and ignores it.
He uses the idea of Suiyuan temple to recognize the sea, show the sun and send out the pure yang breath.
Every time he passes by the residents of a small town, he removes the yin qi from the other person's body. However, Yi Tian also knows that the method he is taking now is a last resort. It's just like the simple method of treating head pain and foot pain. There is no way to remove the root. The best way is to find the root of this yin qi and get rid of it. I'd better go near the school and find a teacher to inquire about the location of the welfare home. Yi Tian pondered a little, and finally decided to walk around the town, looking for a person who can communicate with, finding the specific location of the welfare home, and by the way, asking the other party about the occurrence of this kind of yin qi, to see if he can find useful information. A moment later, Yi Tian wandered around the town for a moment and found the location of the town middle school. As soon as he got to the gate, he saw a young girl with gold glasses and a beige windbreaker coming out of it. The girl is very beautiful, her features are clear and beautiful, with a kind of gentle book atmosphere. Standing at the door of the old town, she seems to have a very out-of-place feeling, like an angel falling from the cloud into the dust.
Hello, are you a teacher in this school? Can you speak Mandarin? Yi Tian doesn't have any hesitation.
He immediately steps up and looks at the girl and asks with a smile.
Yes, I'm a teacher in this school. What's the matter? What can I do for you?
The girl hears Yi Tian's words, obviously lang for a while, then looks at Yi Tian, puzzled ask away.
Great.
When Yi Tian heard the girl's words, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked with a smile, I'm a tourist from other places.
I want to ask where is the welfare home in Annan Town?
Tourists?
Annan Town is not a tourist scenic spot, and there is no special scenery.
I have been here for so long, and I have never seen any tourists. I haven't seen any tourists from welfare homes in the past.
What on earth are you here for?
The girl does not answer Yi Tian's question, but stares at him, glances up and down, with vigilance in her eyes. To tell you the truth, a friend of mine grew up in the welfare home of Annan Town. I came here this time to see the place where she grew up.
Yi Tian chuckles and thinks that the girl is very wary.
At the same time, she tells the reason she has already thought about.
Grew up in the welfare home of Annan Town? What's your friend's name? Maybe I know him. The girl continues to chase Yi Tian. Her name is Chen Bing.
She lived in a welfare home a long time ago and was adopted later.
I'm going to Guizhou province recently.
When she heard about it, she asked me to take a look at the welfare home and take some pictures for her to take back. Yi Tian reported the name of the disciple of Shuiyue's sect and replied calmly. With these words, he took out a group photo with the disciple of Shuiyuzong and showed it to the girl.
Bing Bing. It's really ice. Oh, my God.
She hasn't changed much since she was a child.
How is she doing now? How are you doing?
At the sight of the photo, the girl's expression immediately became excited.
Looking at Yi Tian, she asked nervously. Do you know her? Yi Tian is stunned and looks at the girl in surprise.
Unexpectedly, as soon as he arrives at Annan Town, he meets an acquaintance of Chen Bing. Fortunately, he took a picture with Chen Bing before. Otherwise, he will be in some trouble.
My name is Zhu Yeye. Like Bing Bing, I grew up in the welfare home of Annan Town.
But she was adopted when she was a child.
I was not so lucky as her. I grew up in the welfare home all the time. After finishing high school, I was admitted to Guizhou Normal University. After graduation, I chose to go back to Annan Town to teach.
When the girl heard this, she explained the cause and effect to Yi Tian.
She's having a good time now. She has food and clothing, and she's very happy.
Yi Tian smells speech, showing Zhu Yu smile, eyes with a more admiration. You know, in today's world, everyone is striving to go up, especially girls like Zhu Yeye who have made great efforts to get out of the mountains. They are basically unwilling to go back to the small village they used to live in all their lives. But Zhu Yeye, after graduating from university, chose to return to Annan Town to teach the children here. This kindness can't help but make people moved. However, this can also explain why Zhu Yeye's clothes look so different from those in the town. Can you call Bing Bing? When we were two children in the welfare home, we had a very good relationship. When she was adopted, we made an appointment to write letters frequently. Unfortunately, I didn't receive her letter for any reason. I cried several times secretly. I didn't expect to hear from her after so many years.
It's really amazing.
At this time, Zhu Yeye looks at Yi Tian and asks with expectation.
No problem.
I'll get in touch with her for you.
Yi Tian looks at Zhu Yeye, smiles and nods, then dials Chen Bing's mobile phone number. This number is what he asked Chen Bing for before he left Shuiyuzone. The purpose is to confirm Kongming Cicada from her after arriving at Annan Town. Master Yi, what can I do for you?
As soon as the phone is dialed, Yi Tian feels that Chen Bing is just like standing next to the phone. He connects immediately and says respectfully.
However, Yi Tian's guess is correct.
Since Tian asked for Chen Bing's number and talked about Annam town, there may be something to contact Chen Bing. The Lord of Shueyu's sect arranged for Chen Bing to suspend his cultivation. He only needed to do one thing, that is to hold his mobile phone and wait for Tian's call at any time. When you were a child, did you have a good friend named Zhu Yeye? Tian answers the phone and asks Chen Bing with a smile. Yes, I have a friend named Yeye in the welfare home. When Chen Bing heard this, he immediately thought about the cableway, followed by it, and said in surprise, Master, have you seen the moon? Yes, he's right by my side. She wants to talk to you. You two can talk. Tian nods, after a warm voice, hands his mobile phone to Zhu Yeye. Bing bing. After Zhu Yeye took the phone, her voice immediately trembled, like joy and panic. It's always touching to see you again after a long time. Tian looks at this scene and sighs gently. In a moment, he runs the sun and changes the positive and positive breath to Zhu Yeye to eliminate the yin qi in her body. Well. But the breath is just didn't enter, the eyebrow of Leaf Day then suddenly twisted into a knot in one's heart. The yin qi of the residents in the small town is very weak. The most positive and positive breath of Sui Wangwen's idea can be eliminated by sweeping it away. However, Zhu Yeye's yin qi was several times stronger than that of other residents. After 3 turns, it was considered that all the yin qi could be eliminated. Thank you, Mr. Yi. If I didn't happen to meet you, I didn't expect that I would still have a chance to hear Bing Bing's voice. At this time, Zhu Yeye hung up the phone and went to Tian, handed him his mobile phone and said with a smile. You're welcome. It's not easy to walk out of the mountain. After walking out of the mountain, you still choose to come back and teach the children in the mountain. This pure heart is admirable. Tian waved his hand with a smile, and then said sincerely. I'm not as noble as you said, Mr. Yi. The reason why I went back to Annan town is very simple. I just hope to have more children and have the opportunity to go out of the mountains and see the scenery like me. Zhu Yeye shook her head with a smile, and then said, Bing Bing told me that Mr. Yi would go to the welfare home to have a look, and then we would go to the forest where Bing Bing and I used to play when we were children and take some pictures. It happens that I have no class in the afternoon. I'll take you with me. I'm familiar with the situation there. Please, Miss Zhu. The Leaf Day hears the speech to be greatly pleased, toward Zhu Yeye's sincere way. In this unfamiliar place, it's really convenient to have a local aboriginal to help as a guide. You're welcome. Let's go. Zhu Yeye smiles genially, then takes Tian and goes to the welfare home of Annam town. It is obvious that Zhu Yeye is well known in the small town and loved by people. Everyone who sees her in the street, old people or children, will smile and nod to her and say hello. Of course, in this case, Tian has also become the object of attention. After greeting Zhu Yeye, those people will point at Tian and ask Zhu Yeye questions with a smile. Looking at the eyes and expression, it is obvious that they regard Tian as Zhu Yeye's boyfriend. Mr. Yi, I'm really sorry. After I graduated from university, my contact with my classmates at that time gradually faded. They didn't see boys coming to me, so they misunderstood me. Zhu Yeye explained to several people, looking at Tian, some embarrassed way. It's okay. Everyone cares about Mr. Zhu so much, which shows that Mr. Zhu's popularity in the small town is very good. Tian chuckled, then pretended to be unintentional and said, however, I think everyone in the small town seems to care about their body shape. Everyone looks very slim. Do you have any health tips? Mr. Yi, you're joking. People in the small town don't have this idea. When Zhu Yeye heard the speech, she immediately shook her head with a wry smile, followed closely, some confusion appeared in her eyes, and said, everyone in the town has really lost a lot in the past 2 years. When I first came back from studying in the provincial capital, I often saw some fat people, but now they are very rare. I think it may be the relationship between soil and water. After I came back from the provincial capital, I became thinner, and I always felt heavy in my heart. However, after I just called Bing Bing, I felt much more comfortable. The appearance of yin qi is in the past 2 years. Tian hears Zhu Yeye's words. Although she smiles on her face, she thinks in her heart that she has captured some truth from her words. And this discovery, more let leaf day in the heart, gave birth to a kind of warning sign. The invasion of yin qi does great harm to the human body, and it is the source of the invasion of the human body. Perhaps, nothing can be seen for a while, but over time, when it breaks out, it will break the dike like water and fall like a mountain, and there is no way to return to heaven. These residents in Annan town have been attacked by yin qi for 2 years. Maybe there is not much yin qi in their bodies, but the damage to their body must have reached a critical point. If they continue to do so, I am afraid that a large number of people will fall ill soon. At that time, this border town, which is already dead, will become a dead town. I heard Bingbing say that there seems to be some evil places in Annam town. As soon as they come near, they will feel chilly and cold all over. I don't know if there are such places really. With this in mind, Yi Tian continues to ask Zhu Yeye, pretending to be unintentional, trying to find the root of this situation from the place where the yin is the most serious in Annam town.
Bingbing, that girl has a good memory.
When she was a child, she heard stories in the welfare home, but now she still remembers them clearly. Zhu Yeye heard the speech, nodded with a smile, and then said, "There is a place like this in Annam town, which is not far from the welfare home. It's always gloomy and chilly there, and it's very evil. There's always the sound of cicadas coming from there. After listening to it for a long time, people will be sleepy." Once someone had been sleeping there all night in the cold winter, and they were frozen to death. In the valley, there are cicadas chirping. People feel sleepy after hearing them. After hearing the sound, Yi Tian's eyes flashed a bright color. What Zhu Yeye said is the unique characteristic of the cicada. However, what puzzled him was that, as far as he knew, the cicada didn't seem to live in the land full of yin and evil. How could the two be mixed up? However, none of these problems is a problem. When we get to the welfare home and go to that valley, we will know everything. After a moment of greetings and curiosity, Yi Tian, led by Zhu Yeye, came to the gate of the welfare home in Annam town. However, as soon as they got to the gate of the welfare home, they saw that the old people and the children at the gate of the welfare home were in a mess. The children were looking at the welfare home, while the old people were sighing. And from the welfare home, there were bursts of shrill but old voices like crying and howling. "Little Stone, what's the matter?" Zhu Yeye grew up in a welfare home when she was a child. When she returned to Annam town after graduation, she usually came to the welfare home. She was very familiar with everyone. Seeing the news, she quickly waved to a child at the door and asked in a hurry, "Mr. Zhu, grandfather Li has run into evil spirits. After he came back from the mountain to pick up firewood, he said that we are all monsters and ghosts. We want to cut off demons, and we are going to cut people with a kitchen knife." Fortunately, several grandfathers have held him down, and now they are exorcising evil spirits for him. The small stone hears the sound, hastily timidly told the cause and effect to Zhu Yeye. The welfare homes in the town are different from those in big cities. Neither the elderly nor the children need to do anything. Instead, they need to do what they can to lighten the burden of the welfare homes. Most of the time, the elderly go to the mountains to collect firewood and the children grow and wash vegetables. It's not too tiring and they can exercise. Run into evil? Yi Tian listens to Zhu Yeye's translation, and his eyes suddenly change. He doubted that Grandfather Li's attack on evil spirits was not the attack on evil spirits, but the accumulation of yin qi in his body broke through the critical value. Yin qi confused his consciousness and made the world he saw become a strange illusion. The old people and children he saw were all green-faced demons. But just then, along the welfare home, suddenly there was a shrill howl. What happened? Yi Tian hears the sound and rushes in without thinking. As soon as his eyes were swept, he immediately saw that a skinny old man with white hair was being pressed on the table by several old people. At this time, the skinny old man was biting one of the old people's wrists tightly. His mouth was so fierce that he broke the old man's arm and blood was flowing. Although the other old men struggled to pull, he didn't mean to let go. "Ghosts, you are all ghosts, bite you to death." Not only that, the skinny old man, while biting, at the same time looked strange, ambiguous growl more than. That ferocious expression, as well as the blood flowing along the corner of the mouth, makes people feel that he seems to be the real ghost.
So painful. Lao Li, you are crazy.
Let go of your mouth. Pry open his mouth quickly. This old guy, this time is really crazy. This scene made the old people in the welfare home who were pressing Lao Li's head, frightened and scared, press him in a hurry. Seeing that the old man who was bitten couldn't break free, he winked at the old people nearby. Immediately someone took a pine stick with a thick wrist to pry Lao Li's mouth open.
Don't worry, let me do something about it.
Yi Tian sees this, the vision is one Lin, quickly step forward, loud voice way. You know, for these elderly people, if they have good teeth, their appetite will be much better and their health will be much better. Now, if you use a pine stick to pry open the old man's mouth, it is bound to destroy his mouth full of teeth and bring unnecessary harm. As the words fell, Yi Tian's hand flashed out and landed on Li Tu's chin. With a slight shake and push, the old man's chin immediately dislocated from his cheek, and the mouth that he had been biting suddenly opened.
Who?
In a flash, the old man who was bitten quickly pulled out his hand. Looking at the deep blood teeth marks on his hand, he was so painful that he couldn't breathe.
At this time, Yi Tian's action did not stop at all.
He raised his hand to Lao Li Tu's body and pressed his blood with magic power to make his body stiff. After he could not move anymore, he held his chin in his hand and pushed it up slightly to restore his dislocated chin. After that, he patted Lao Li Tu's body with his hands like massage. As he dropped his hands, he ran the idea of Sua Wangwen and realized the sea. A big sun suddenly appeared, and the original spirit fire also swam around. With the action, every drop of the power of the Supreme Yang swept Lao Li Tu's whole body. What a strong yin qi! As soon as the breath of Jiang comes into Lao Li's body, Yi Tian immediately feels a strong resistance. However, although these yin qi are very rich and powerful, they are still limited compared with Yi Tian's breath of the most positive qi. The breath of the most positive qi only turns for 3 turns, then it suddenly washes the wisps of yin qi into the air and disappears.
Wheezing.
As the yin qi dissipated, old Li Tu's eyes, which were originally scarlet and crazy, suddenly became clear. While he was breathing heavily, his turbid old eyes looked around in shock.
He opened his mouth and said, "What's the matter? Lao Li Tu, are you awake at last? You old man, it's good to ask us what's the matter with us. You've run into evil. Look what you've done to me.
Old man, I'll tell you, after you're ready this time, you have to buy us a drink to calm us down." Hearing this, the old people first took a look at Yi Tian in shock, and then laughed and scolded Lao Li Tu.
"Doctor, thank you, otherwise, we just really don't know what to do."
Then, these old people, Shushu, saluted Yi Tian, and their faces were full of sincere gratitude. As they said, the situation of old Li Tu just now makes them in a hurry and have no idea what they should do. Thanks to Yi Tian's hand, otherwise, if according to their idea, I'm afraid that old Li Tu's mouth has no teeth now, and even then, whether he can control it is 2 questions. Under such circumstances, how can they not be grateful to Yi Tian?
The old people say thank you. Without you, they really don't know what to do.
Zhu Yeye saw the perplexed color on Yi Tian's face and quickly explained to him. Then she looked at Yi Tian in surprise and said, "Mr. Yi, are you a doctor?"
"Yes." Yi Tian hesitates, looks at Zhu Yeye and nods with a smile.
"So?"
Zhu Yeye's face is full of confusion and doesn't understand what Yi Tian's words mean.
"I specialize in treating some difficult and miscellaneous diseases, and my treatment method is different from that of other doctors. Therefore, I am a doctor, but I am not a doctor in the normal category."
Yi Tian chuckles and gives his own explanation, which not only dispels Zhu Yeye's doubts, but also paves the way for the extraordinary means he may show later.
After all, it is normal for doctors who specialize in the treatment of difficult and miscellaneous diseases to have some extraordinary means.
So it is. Zhu Yeye hears speech, this just suddenly enlightened nodded. "Please ask me what happened to the old man just now. This kind of situation is very rare. I'm very curious." At this time, Yi Tian looks at Zhu Yeye, chuckles, digs the topic and asks her. "Well, I'll ask for you." Zhu Yeye nodded in a hurry, then went to Lao Li Tu's side and asked him softly.
Old Li Tu was obviously puzzled and afraid of the situation just now.
He said a lot to Zhu Yeye. Grandfather Li said that he didn't know what was going on. He was tired when he went to the back mountain to collect firewood. He sat there and had a rest for a while. Then he felt sleepy. Later, he didn't know anything about it. He only knew that when he returned to the welfare home, he saw the adults and children in the yard. In his eyes, they were all green-faced and fierce. He thought they had gone to the ghost nest. I want to take a kitchen knife and chop these ghosts to death. Zhu Yeye, after listening to old Li Tu's words, comforted him a few words, then returned to Yi Tian's side, told him the cause and effect. First sleepy, then attacked by Yin Qi. After hearing Zhu Yeye's words, Yi Tian's previous conjecture became more firm at the moment. This abnormal situation of Yin Qi in Annam town has something to do with the empty cicada. At the same time, he was even more relieved. No matter what role Kongming cicada played in these affairs, whether it was unintentional or manipulated, it means that Kongming cicada has not disappeared from Annam town, but is still in the jungle. Immediately after that, Yi Tian glanced at many old people and children in the welfare home, and immediately saw that their bodies, like other residents of Annan town, were also full of Yin Qi. Moreover, when it comes to the intensity of Yin Qi, they were far more than those residents in the town, similar to Zhu Yeye. Did you often come to the welfare home before? Going to the roller coaster? Next, Yi Tian looks at Zhu Yeye and asks her with a smile. Well, I grew up in a welfare home. When I was a child, I couldn't help them much. Now when I grow up, I often come here to help them do what I can. Zhu Yeye nodded with a smile. After explaining, she looked at Yi Tian and said, Mr. Yi, what's the matter? I found an interesting situation. No matter you or the elderly and children in the welfare home, you all have a lesion caused by strange disease. The only thing you have in common is that you have been to the back of the welfare home. So, I think the crux may be in the back mountain. Yi Tian said slowly. Focus? So do I? Zhu Yeye smell speech, immediately stare big eyes, can't believe of looking at Yi Tian, exclaim away. Yes. Yi Tian nodded, and then said, but you don't have to be too nervous. Your condition, as well as those of the old people and children, is very mild. As long as you slowly recuperate, you can recover. However, if you don't get timely treatment, the situation may be similar to that of Lao Li Tu. Hiss. When Zhu Yeye heard this, she immediately took a cold breath. The appearance of Lao Li Tu just now is almost the same as that of the evil ghost. He can't imagine how terrible it would be if he became like this. Help me to ask about the place where Lao Li Tu just went to the back mountain. I want to go there to have a look and see what causes this strange disease. Immediately, Yi Tian looks at Zhu Yeye and corrects the way. Well, let me ask. Zhu Yeye nodded and asked Lao Li a few questions. Then she said to Yi Tian, I've asked Grandfather Li. He told me where he's going. I'll take you there. Good. Yi Tian hesitated for a moment and immediately nodded. Although the appearance of this Yin Qi is strange, it is not too powerful. He believes that even if he takes Zhu Yeye with him, he can provide protection for her without worrying about her safety. Mr. Yi, come with me. When Zhu Yeye heard the speech, she took Yi Tian out of the welfare home. After looking around, she took him to the southwest mountains. Annam town is located in the border area. The mountain forest here has not been developed. Except for some firewood collectors, it is rarely visited at ordinary times. It also maintains a very primitive style. Cicadas and birds are singing in the jungle, and rabbits and pheasants are flying from time to time. It has a very natural atmosphere. To Yi Tian's surprise, although Zhu Yeye looks gentle, she is very smooth on the mountain road. She doesn't need him to wait or help at all. Mr. Yi, you may not know. Although I look like this now, in fact, when I was a child, I was a famous kid in the welfare home. I used to play in the mountains, whether it was climbing trees or taking out birds' nest, it was a common practice. At that time, I was the biggest adult in the welfare home. Zhu Yeye saw Yi Tian's eyes, guessed his idea, and replied with a smile. If you don't say it, you really can't see it. The Leaf Day hears speech, looking at Zhu Yeye to smile way. That's what I pretended to be good. Zhu Yeye said with a smile. After walking a few steps forward, she pointed to the front not far away and said, "Grandfather Li had an accident here." Hearing the sound, Tian immediately looked forward. Glancing over, he immediately saw that there were 2 bundles of dry firewood piled on the ground right where Zhu Yeye pointed. Moreover, on some wet ground, there were still some crooked footprints. It was obvious that, as Zhu Yeye said, it was here that old Li Tu lost his consciousness and landed the beaten dry firewood on the ground. "I'm in front, you're behind me."
Tian sees this. Mao Guangyilin raises hand, indicates Zhu Yeye to stop, walks to her body, then carefully goes forward. Although he has no fear in his heart, now he has Zhu Yeye around him. He is more cautious, and there is no harm in the end. A moment later, Tian went to the firewood pile, and his mind dispersed. He immediately felt that there was a strong smell of Yin and evil in this area. But this kind of breath does not appear here naturally. It seems that something is left here. Is it hard to say that these Yin Qi are not born in the natural environment, but are gathered together by some people, and they possess spirituality? This discovery made Tian feel that things in Annam town are not as simple as he thought. Under such circumstances, as he had thought before, even if he used his secret skill to purge all the Yin Qi and all the people in the town, if he didn't find out the culprit, then I'm afraid that after he left, all these things would make a comeback. "Mr. Yi, have you found anything?" At the same time, Zhu Yeye looks at Tian nervously and asks curiously. "I haven't found anything yet." Tian shook his head and thought about the sun. After dissolving the Yin here, he looked at Zhu Yeye and said with a smile, "The valley you told me about before should be near here, right?" "Well, why, Mr. Yi, do you want to go there?" Zhu Yeye nodded, then looked at Tian nervously and said, "As a person, I like to go to such strange places most, and I think the lesions on you may have something to do with that place." Tian nodded with a smile and explained, "Don't worry, Mr. Zhu. We only go to the valley. We don't go deep into the valley. We just have a look. That valley is very evil. If you want to go, Mr. Yi, I will accompany you. But you have to keep your word. You can't go." And Zhu Yeye hesitated for a moment, then took Tian and walked along the foot of the mountain to one side. After walking along the foot of the mountain for about 6 or 7 minutes, they came to the entrance of a valley. The situation here is not so much a valley as a canyon. 2 high mountains juxtaposed to form this deep canyon. The whole canyon looks like a gateway. Along the valley, there is thick fog, which looks mysterious. Moreover, the fog in the valley is not dead, but flows slowly, which makes people feel more confused. Here is the place where the Yin Qi was born and bred. And in the moment near the valley, Tian's eyes, suddenly there is a fine unblooming. He felt that a continuous stream of Yin Qi, like the eye of a spring, flew out of the valley, lingering in the valley, and finally formed those thick fog. But what made him suspicious was that although the Yin Qi here was rich, he didn't feel the birth of creatures from the Yin Qi. In other words, although the Yin Qi in this area is rich, as long as you don't venture into the valley, there will be no problem of Yin Qi entering the body. It's understandable that the old people in the welfare home occasionally go up the mountain to collect firewood and have Yin Qi in their bodies. But the residents of Annam don't say that everyone comes to the valley, do they? The only explanation is that some people intentionally put those Yin Qi into the bodies of the residents of Annam town. However, this makes Tian's heart, gave birth to a new confusion. The Yin Qi in the residents of Annam town is not too strong, it will only attack the body slowly. In this case, it can be ruled out that some people try to take the lives of the residents of Annam town with the help of Yin Qi to cultivate or refine magic weapons. But then, what's the reason for that person to do all this? It can't be said that if it's unprovoked, you just want to harm people, right? In other words, there is a deep hatred between the people who arranged all this and the residents of the town. Cicada, cicada. But just at this time, along the valley, suddenly came a dry and gloomy trembling sound. The sound of cicadas singing, like a confused sound wave, swept all over the place. Just as it came into the ear, it made Tian feel that his mind was shocked and sleepy. Empty cicada. When Tian heard the sound, his face immediately turned happy, and he meditated in his heart. Next, without any hesitation, Tian had to contemplate the sun, protect himself and Zhu Yeye, and resist the attack of the cicada on the mind.
But before he had any action, when he saw Zhu Yeye next to him, with sleepy face and soft body, leaning against the big stone at the entrance of the valley, his eyes changed and he fell to the ground with soft body. However, a round of sun crossed the sea of knowledge, sending out a strong breath and protecting his sanity. I'd like to see who has such deep hatred with the residents of the town. Yi Tian meditates in his heart, and his expression is dull. At the same time, his thoughts disperse, and he observes the surrounding dynamic and static. The main culprit of all this appears. Cicada, cicada. The sound of the cicada continued for several minutes, and then it finally dropped. Whoosh! Almost at the same time when the sound of cicadas fell along the canyon, suddenly a bright red silk line with rich color and blood flew out of the canyon and appeared in the sky of Yi Tian and Zhu Yeye. Not only that, but also an emerald green cicada flew out. The whole body was carved with jasper. It was crystal clear and lovely. It's a cicada in the sky. When Yi Tian saw the cicada, he did not hesitate to raise his hand to catch the cicada. Little red, little green. But at this time, let Yi Tian feel extremely incredible scene appeared. See, before he fainted in the ground, Zhu Yeye unexpectedly suddenly sat up from the ground, followed closely, smiling hand to empty cicada and red silking chia move. These two, one fell on her shoulder, a meat clever wrapped in her wrist, such as a red rope. Mr. Yi, what should I do with you? Closely following, Zhu Yeye turns her head and looks at Yi Tian's face. She smiles bitterly and murmurs. Zhu Yeye. Zhu Yeye is the real culprit who led to this strange phenomenon in Annam town. When Zhu Yeye's words fall, Yi Tian immediately feels that in the bottom of his heart, if suddenly there are waves rolling up, his head is buzzing. Zhu Yeye is the real culprit who led to the rampage of Yin Qi in Annam town. Yi Tian only feels that 10 million waves are surging in his heart. The truth is that he didn't even think of it. You know, Zhu Yeye's previous performance is perfect, even admirable. She can be said to be an absolute good person. Such a girl doesn't look like a big devil who wants to destroy a small town resident, but the real murderer is her. However, what puzzles Yi Tian is that he does not perceive any unique qi from Zhu Yeye. There is no cultivation, but you can control Yin qi, which cannot help but make people confused. Kill you? You didn't do anything wrong. Just shouldn't have come to this place. If I don't kill you, you will notice the abnormality of Annam town. If I don't kill you, my plan will be destroyed. Mr. Yi, you really give me a big problem. At this time, Yi Tian heard Zhu Yeye mumbling to herself, and the voice of words was full of embarrassment. After hearing the news, Yi Tian's original intention to storm and subdue Zhu Yeye suddenly faded away. Instead, he continued to pretend to be hypnotized by the attack of Kong Mingchan's divine consciousness, completely ignorant of what happened outside. He wants to see how Zhu Yeye plans to deal with an innocent person. If Zhu Yeye wants to kill him, it means that the girl has no medicine to save. He can be confident and bold to kill her. But if she is merciful, it means that he can find out the truth. Kill you? Or not? After staring at Yi Tian for a long time, Zhu Yeye finally made a decision and said, Zhu Yeye, have revenge. You haven't done anything evil to me. I won't kill you, but I want to make you suffer a little and dare not come back to Annam town. This girl is kind-hearted. Just, what does she mean by revenge? Does she have a grudge against the people in Annam town? Yi Tian felt a little relieved. To tell you the truth, Zhu Yeye's previous performance really made him not bear to kill. After all, her care for the children in the welfare home seems to be true, without any sign of pretending. However, he can't understand what Zhu Yeye's words of revenge mean. Xiao Hong, come into his body, let him have a terrible nightmare, give him some pain, and then let him wake up and leave. At this time, Zhu Yeye raised her hand and looked at the Insha breath like the red rope on her wrist. She made a decision. With a shake of her hand, the red rope flew out and floated to Yi Tian. Insha red rope speed is very fast. In an instant, it has appeared in the top of Yi Tian's head, with a buzz, Dao Insha breath, then suddenly along the red rope, to attack Yi Tian's head. All evils do not invade, all evils do not come near.
But at this time, Zhu Ye completely did not think of a scene, suddenly appeared. See, Tian run su a wangguan idea, think of the sun, resist the invasion of the wisps of Insha breath, at the same time, suddenly recite the truth. Immediately, a carp stand up from the ground, hand forward a grasp, will Insha red rope into the palm.
Top grade Lingbao.
As soon as Insha red rope entered his hand, Tian immediately judged that this Insha red rope was a top grade spiritual treasure with excellent quality. Even half of his foot was about to enter the level of magic weapon, so he could be inspired by Zhu Ye's words and send out the powerful spirit of Insha.
Little green.
Zhu Ye was surprised. She took a step back and said in a loud voice, "Cicada, cicada." In an instant, along the field, suddenly there are bursts of cicadas chirping sound, continuous sound waves, sweeping the mind, to let people give up resistance, deep sleep. However, it is a pity that Yi Tian's mind is extremely powerful, and the cicadas singing cannot disturb him at all. Not only that, but also he used his hand to take pictures of the clouds. He raised his hand and gently grasped the cicada. Suddenly, he felt a strange force sweeping all over his body.
Then he flew uncontrollably from Zhu Ye's shoulder to Yi Tian's palm. You who are you?
Zhu Ye is stunned and looks at Yi Tian in disbelief, exclaiming. Before that, Yi Tian cured Lao Li Tu in the welfare home. She thought that Yi Tian was a miracle doctor who knew some strange methods. But now it seems that she was obviously wrong at that time.
Yi Tian's strength is definitely more than a miracle doctor. At least, she hasn't met anyone who can easily subdue Xiaohong and Zilf. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, why do you do that to the residents of Annantown? What kind of grievances do they have against you? Do you want to use this method to harm them and take their lives?
Yi Tian did not answer Zhu Ye's question, but looked at her eyes and asked. As soon as he caught hold of the Insha red rope, he found that the Insha breath and the Insha red rope was not captured from the human body, but absorbed from the nature. This shows a situation, that is, what Zhu Ye has done is not to nourish Insha with human body, then feed back Insha red rope, improve the quality of Insha red rope, and make it break through to the level of magic weapon from top-class spirit soldier.
I'm not as good as others.
If I want to kill or cut, I'll do as I please.
Although Zhu Ye is delicate and weak, she is very upright.
When she heard Yi Tian's words, her eyes changed. She took a step forward and calmed down.
Do you think if I were to kill you, I would keep you till now?
Yi Tian looked at Zhu Ye, raised his eyebrows and gave a light smile. Immediately, he shook his hand and let go of the red rope and the cicada. As soon as they were free, they immediately flew back to Zhu Ye and continued to wrap one around her wrist and the other on her shoulder. However, no matter which one of them was, they were all in a state of panic and fear.
Zhu Ye was silent when she heard the news.
She knows that, as Yi Tian said, if Yi Tian wants to kill her, he can let her die casually. But Yi Tian has let her live to the present, which shows that Yi Tian has no intention of killing her.
I'm not a saint.
If the people in Annam really have blood feuds with you, I promise that I will never help them.
Moreover, even if I help you to kill all the people in this town, what can it be?
At this time, Yi Tian light smile, looking at Zhu Ye, calmly.
Zhu Ye hears the news and looks at Yi Tian in consternation.
After staring at him up and down for a long time, she doesn't see any pretending look on his face.
Moreover, when it comes to killing all the people in a town, she hears a kind of indifference from Yi Tian's tone.
As if, with him, such a thing is very common, or he has done something more cruel than this.
But where does Zhu Ye know that Yi Tian once slaughtered Taiman alone?
The blood in his hands was more than a small town. Needless to say, when he was in Fangsu and Lingyu, he took part in the battles between Zongmen. In his eyes, nothing could be counted as a small town. If these people, really full of evil, have done unforgivable things to Zhu Ye, then he doesn't mind and will destroy her. Since you are willing to listen, I will tell you, but it is a very distant story. A long time ago, there was an abandoned baby girl in Annam town who was put in the welfare home. When she grew up, she was very naughty and liked to run around without discipline. She was always scolded by some people. If she had a mother, she would give birth to a child without a mother, just like a wild child. But these curses are nothing. On the night of her 12th birthday, After staring at Yi Tian for a long time, Zhu Yeye chuckled and said slowly, she ate the cake she made for herself, blew the candle, and made a wish for herself. She wanted to get into bed and have a good sleep, but unexpectedly, at this time, her door rang. Of course, the girl had to fight and struggle, but at that time, her strength was not as strong as that of the other party. No matter how she resisted or how loudly she cried, no one came out to help her from the beginning to the end. On the night of her 12th birthday, the gift she received was the darkest day of her life. Zhu Yeye smiled sad, looking at Yi Tian, word by word, slowly way. Although, in her every voice and every sentence, she said girl and did not mention her name, Yi Tian knew that Zhu Yeye was talking about herself. A 12-year-old girl made a wish for herself on the night of her birthday. However, just after the wish was made, life ushered in such a dark moment. Just thinking about all these things, Yi Tian felt that there was a flame surging and burning in her heart, which made his body burst. People who make these things are not worthy of being human, they should be called animals. The girl had no way. In the end, she lost consciousness and only heard the sound of people leaving the room. After waking up, the girl felt very ashamed and angry. She went to the adults in the welfare home and the people in the town, and begged them in every way. She wanted to get help. To her disappointment, everyone thought that she was lying. Everyone thought that she was trying to attract attention. No one was willing to help her. The girl felt that everyone who could help her knelt down and cried and begged, but no one paid attention to her. Even many people humiliated her, arranged all kinds of words and scolded her, saying that she was a coquettish fox at a young age and didn't know how to behave. Even some people pretended to be indifferent during the day, but at night, they went if she knocks on her door secretly, she doesn't open it, kicks the door and smashes the window. If she can't get in, she still swears, so that she doesn't dare to sleep in the house anymore. Instead, she sleeps on the mountain, but no one thought that in the mountains, she met her good friends, Xiao Hong and Xiao Cheng, to let her understand that there are so many possibilities in the world. Finally, the girl grew up, went to the city, went to a fairly good school, and had the ability to protect herself and avenge herself. Mr. Yi, I want to ask you, if it was you, would you like to revenge for such a thing? Zhu Yeye did not stop, word after word, and then looked at Yi Tian's cheek, asked with a smile. I will. Yi Tian was silent for a long time. Finally, he nodded slowly and gave a positive answer. He has never been a kind-hearted person who can smile away his gratitude and revenge. Revenge, resentment and gratitude are his criteria. He asked himself, if you change yourself to Zhu Yeye's position, I'm afraid that what he does will be more ruthless than Zhu Yeye, which will make those people pay the price of bleeding early. After all, the best way to deal with animals is to pay the blood debt with blood. Do you want to stop me? Zhu Yeye smiles, then looks at Yi Tian and continues to ask slowly. I will. Yi Tian was a little silent, then nodded solemnly and continued, because what you did was wrong. Wrong? What did I do wrong? Zhu Yeye looked at Yi Tian at a loss and asked him. You're wrong. You forget one thing. The injustice has a head, the debt has a owner, and you have to take revenge. Naturally, you should find those who bully you to take revenge, instead of venting your anger on those innocent people and letting them bear the pain they shouldn't have suffered. Yi Tianping looks directly into Zhu Yeye's eyes and says what he thinks. Zhu Yeye's experience is indeed very sympathetic and indignant. Similarly, Yi Tian is not the kind of good man who returns good for evil. But just as he said, Zhu Yeye wants revenge. He doesn't think there is any problem, but the key is to get revenge. If you want revenge, you should go to the real murderer to get revenge. Those innocent people, nothing wrong, why let them should not bear the pain? Victims naturally have the right to revenge, but they can't vent their hatred and anger on those innocent people. In that case, what's the difference between those who do all this and evil dragons? After so many years, that man's head is still wearing a mask. Do you think I can still find the real murderer? If people in this town could have stood up and helped me, do you think I would have? Why can't they stand up and help me at that time? Zhu Yeye heard the speech and burst out laughing. Then she looked at Yi Tian and said, there are no good people in Anan town. Every one of them is a murderer. No good people in Annam? Yi Tian listened to this, and then looked at the indignant, murderous Zhu Yeye in her eyes. She couldn't help but smile bitterly and shook her head. Then she slowly said, "You said that all of them should help you, but have you ever thought that as long as they are human beings, they have the instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages, and don't talk about them? Do you think they are like this?" A language falls, Zhu Yeye became silent, immediately come down. What she hoped was that someone in Annam would stand up to her and help her when she needed help. But she didn't think that those people, who were not related to her, were just ordinary people. No matter who they were willing to cause unnecessary trouble for themselves, especially the kind of trouble Zhu Yeye had met. Each of them has his own family and life. How many people are willing to change their life because of others? You have to take revenge. I support you and can understand you, but it's still the sentence I just said. Injustice has its head and debt has its owner. It's not these people that you should look for, but the backhands of the original culprits. Punish them and make them pay the price of bleeding. Tian looks directly at Zhu Yeye's eyes and says slowly. After a long time, when I woke up that day, I felt that I was too dirty, so I went to the bathroom and took a bath. Zhu Yeye shook her head slowly and said bitterly. At the beginning, all the evidence has disappeared with the waves of history. Now it's not easy to find it back under such circumstances. It is almost as difficult to bring up the past and find out the real culprit as it is to go to heaven. Don't worry, I'll deal with it. I will give you a belated justice and justice. Tian smelled speech, staring at Zhu Yeye, word by word, gave his promise. He didn't want Zhu Yeye to kill innocent people indiscriminately, and let some innocent people bear the responsibility of reckless disaster because of what the real murderer did. Since Zhu Yeye can't do it, he will find out the real murderer for Zhu Yeye. Perhaps, time has indeed passed for many years, and many truths have been scattered in the long history. But he believes that as long as he does it himself, he can help Zhu find out the truth, find the culprit and bring him to justice. This is the most determined thought in his heart at this moment. Are you sure? Zhu Yeye looks at Tian doubtfully. Some can't believe what he said. She has also investigated the truth of that year, but unfortunately, the conditions at that time were too simple. Because of her, the evidence no longer existed, and there was no surveillance video in her residence. Therefore, it is very difficult to find out who the real murderer was that night. In the past few years, she has made numerous investigations, investigated and investigated again, in order to find clues, but unfortunately, nothing has been found. Now, Tian says that she wants to help her investigate the truth, find out the real murderer, and let him get the punishment he deserves. She really feels that there is little hope. Believe me, I will never cheat you. Tian hears the sound and looks at Zhu Yeye with a smile. After giving a positive answer, he immediately says, "If I find the real murderer, do you want to live, or be disabled, or be dead?"